It's 6:33. Good evening, everybody. I welcome all participants and viewers to the January 7th, 2021 Cohasset Conservation Commission meeting. My name is Eric Eisenhower and I am chair of the CONCOM. I will run tonight's meeting and I look forward to a productive meeting as we implement the Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetland Protection Acts and the Cohasset Stormwater Act. We will be operating this meeting using the Zoom format. Our conservation agent will have a few words later on as to the functioning of the Zoom format. Present this evening on behalf of the CONCOM are, please answer present, Angela Giso, our conservation administrator.
She doesn't have audio at the moment.
She's present. Jeff Summers?
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Kathy Berrigan.
Present.
Eric Eisenhower present. Commissioner Trish Grady.
Trish Grady present.
Commissioner Chris McFarland.
McFarland present.
Commissioner Jay Pimpare.
Present, sorry.
That's okay. Commissioner Marianne Weatherald. You're here yet, Marianne? I see you. I'm going to count you in, all right? I count you in. And Associate Commissioners Heather Seitz.
Present.
And Tom Bell, who I do not see this evening. Okay. We have a quorum of 6 commissioners. We'll be taking all votes by a roll call with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain. All individuals from the audience who would like to address an application should check the chat box on their screen. Please identify yourself by name and address in Cohasset when your name is called. Before we begin, I have something I have to read that was advised by Angela, our administrator. Regarding NOI 2021 and SWP 2029 for Lot C, Dolan Lane, and NOI 2020 for 183-187 Atlantic Avenue, these public hearings were previously continued from December 3rd, 2020 to January 7th, 2021. But at the request of the applicant, both public hearings have been further continued to February 4th, 2021. We apologize for any inconvenience. The first proposal we're going to hear this evening is by CHI Elm Street Realty, LLC, and I will read the notice of the public hearing. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw, and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 6:30 via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicant CHI Elm Street Realty, LLC for Notice of Intent 20-03 and Stormwater Permit 2102 for commercial / residential mixed use redevelopment at 87-124 Elm Street. And I turn it over to the proposer to pick up and run with that. Good evening, Tom. I notice you're here. Okay, I believe it's John Cavanero, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm just going to see who John also. I see Ted Lubitz is here, George McGoldrick, and Attorney Brodsky. I just want to see who John wants me to also have on.
Okay.
Happy New Year. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks, John. You as well.
Thank you, John.
Adam, if you could bring up, I'm sorry, Jeff, if you could bring up Adam Brodsky.
Okay.
Ted Lubitz, George McGoldrick, and if Jennifer Ng is also present.
She is.
Thank you.
George has 2 names here, so I'm going to pick one and see if it works.
Okay. And what I will do is have Adam just give a brief introduction of the project team, a little brief background history, and then I will resume the presentation on behalf of CHI.
Thank you, John. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm an environmental and land use lawyer with Drowan, Tacho, and Morgan in Hingham, and I represent CHI Elm Street Realty LLC. George McGoldrick and Ted Lubitz are the principals of the applicant. You obviously know John, our professional engineer, and I would like to introduce Jennifer Ng from KMDG, which is our landscape firm. The project, very briefly, consists of two separate properties, 124 Elm Street and 87 Elm Street. 124 Elm Street is the location of the existing Cohasset Harbor Inn, which you're all likely familiar with. That property is located within the FEMA AE Elevation 10 flood zone and contains buffer zone to coastal bank, which is the seaward face of the existing seawall. 87 Elm Street is improved with an existing residential and commercial mixed-use building and is located within the FEMA Zone AE Elevation 9 flood zone and also contains riverfront area. As John will explain, we're proposing two 3-story mixed-use buildings at 124 Elm Street and one 2-story mixed-use building at 87 Elm Street. This is a redevelopment project that's going to improve conditions. We're proposing to raise non-flood compliant structures and replace them with new structures that fully comply with the flood resistant construction requirements under the state building code. We're requesting an order of conditions and a stormwater permit. And just to let you know where we are procedurally with the other boards, we are nearing the end of our permitting with the planning board, for which we're seeking a special permit and site plan review. We're meeting with them next week and are anticipating a favorable decision. I do know, and you may be familiar, that the planning board retained a peer review consultant who has reviewed extensively our stormwater management system. And we also require a floodplain special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we've completed our presentations and expect a decision from the zoning board at our next meeting in February. And again, that permit addressed extensively floodplain compliance. And with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it back to John, please.
Thank you very much, Adam. So, Jeff, if you'll allow me, I'm going to share my screen and pull up the site plans.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And I assume everybody can see that okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to walk through the
now,
site.
before we begin, let me ask you one question.
Sure.
Would you prefer that we held off our questions until you finished your presentation? Because your presentation may just be thrown about quite a bit if we throw questions at you whenever they happen to pop up. How would you like to play that?
I would appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, if that would be the will of the board.
That's fine.
Because what I'll do is I'll go through the plans, and then I will also ask Jen to go through the landscape plan. And then after that, we'll return to myself or Adam or anybody on the team for questions and answers, if that's okay.
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 Hey, John, just
so I'll walk through.
sorry to interrupt you, Jay Pimpar. Just a quick procedural question. I assume that the set of plans that are in front of us tonight are the latest set of plans that are also in front of the planning board. I have not been following that whatsoever, but I assume that this plan is the latest and greatest plan that's in front of all boards at this time.
This is the latest and greatest plan that has been prepared with respect to the conservation. Principally, almost all of it has been in front of the planning board and the Board of Appeals, but those plans were submitted prior to this application being submitted, but principally the majority of the information is the same. Some of it is probably been updated since then because this application was submitted after the fact of those two, but generally they're conceptually the same as far as the proposed work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So what we're looking at is the existing conditions of both 87 Elm, which is the Cohasset Harbor Inn, and 124 Elm, which is the Cohasset Harbor Inn, and 87 Elm, which is across the street. I'll walk through sort of both properties at the same time. I'll go back 87 to 124, and then I'll get into the proposed conditions. So essentially, as Adam mentioned, The resource areas over at 124 consist of coastal bank that run along the Cohasset Cove, Cohasset Harbor, with a 50 and a 100-foot buffer zone that come off of the bank. And this is also land subject to coastal storm flowage because it's within a FEMA designated flood zone. We have an AE elevation 11 from the top of coastal bank inland to a point where it then lowers to an AE 10. And then as it makes its way across 124 Elm, it drops down to an AE 9, which is what carries across the property at 87 Elm. Over at 87 Elm, we have the James Brook, which is a perennial river. It's subject to the Rivers Protection Act, and that has a 100-foot inner riparian and a 100-foot outer riparian zone. So, and this property also is land subject to coastal storm flowage, mixing up the acronyms. So both land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank 50 and 100 at 124, riverfront 100, 100 at 87. So 124 is currently a 55-room hotel it's a mixed-use property in the sense that it has a restaurant facility, function room, recreation facilities, and it has about 43 open-air parking spaces that circumvent the property over to a point where it abuts what we'll call the town parking lot. The town parking lot is located adjacent to the Veterans Memorial, which also fronts on Cohasset Cove. And this property is actually, it abuts the property at 124, but it's a very circuitous property line that makes its way through this property. So this parking area over here is almost a shared parking lot due to the configuration of the property. But our property, essentially, it benefits from 43 spaces on our property, plus there are more parking spaces in the town lot. Over at 87 Elm, we also have a mixed-use property, and this has a combination of multifamily dwellings as well as some commercial space that fronts right along Elm Street. The parking lot is pretty much includes the entire property. This lot has served as a valet parking lot in addition to servicing the structures on the property. In researching the active special permits for this, we found that actually 87 has had a parking plan put together to identify the capacity of its parking for the hotel and the adjacent properties within the area under the common ownership. So this is actually the current parking plan that is part of the special permit for associated with 124 Elm, because these properties have been together for quite some time. So this actually explains a little bit about the configuration of what's out here. This is an aerial that we recovered that dates back to that special permit, and it shows the outline of the pavement that runs pretty much along the entire property line up to these existing buildings and over. This is the lot line. And it makes some sense to the large granite blocks that still exist today that run along the river's edge right up against the parking in the paved area that essentially includes the entire property. So that's the existing facility. It's as Adam said, this is a redevelopment project. These are two highly developed, highly paved, large capacity parking lots with mixed-use buildings. And what we're proposing to do, I'm going to show a plan that has it's going to be a little busy, and then I'll get to some less busy plans, but I wanted to just show for perspective the overlay of the existing buildings over and including the proposed buildings on the same plan to show the sort of the real crux of what this proposal is looking to solve and also create, and as Adam mentioned, really leave the property in a better shape from an environmental standpoint, from functionality, from a public space, from a stormwater management perspective. So right now, we have an existing building that really primarily occupies the 100-foot buffer zone. You can see this is the 100-foot buffer zone, and the majority of the building sits within that footprint. A large portion is within the 50-foot buffer to that buffer zone to the coastal bank. One of the driving factors with this whole village overlay district that was created through recent town meeting was to create a mixed-use environment here, and also to one of the tenets of the bylaw change was to open up a view corridor along Margin Street, which is obviously blocked right now with the existing building footprint. So the idea was anything that was to be developed here, to keep in mind that an open view corridor to the ocean would become part of that proposal. So that was sort of a driver as to the layout of some of these buildings. And secondly, another key item of that bylaw change was to create more public access to the harbor. So the second real principal benefit to this proposal is we're adding a walkway that runs along Cohasset Cove, along the harbor, where right now the building currently occupies. So between the view corridor and the public space that runs along the harbor that will connect to the existing walkway adjacent to the Cohasset Memorial, those are sort of two driving factors. And in addition to that, to create some more open space where the existing building occupies today. So to get to a less busy plan, here's a site plan that essentially illustrates what is being proposed without the existing building overlaid. So you'll see that the principal building, that we'll call this the north building at 124, south building at 124, and this is the west building at 87 Elm. So the building's been pulled back substantially with some decking area and some open space further seaward. And here's a look at that walkway that will run along the harbor and connect to the town parking lot and the pedestrian access that runs along Border Street. This parking will now all be under roof, which is a real benefit from a stormwater management and water quality standpoint, because now we're taking all that open air parking that exists today around the building and we're putting it under a roof. The only open parking that will remain is the existing parking lot adjacent to the town lot. So all of the residential parking will be located under roof, which is a real benefit. The second thing here is that we're reducing impervious coverage at 124 and at 87 for that matter. But at 124, we're reducing the building footprint overall within the 150-foot buffer zone by about 87, almost 8,800 square feet. And the total impervious is going down about 2,200 square feet. So with that, we're able to reduce the peak rate and volume of runoff that's coming off of this site. Over at 87, similarly, we're reducing the amount of pavement substantially. In fact, we're reducing almost all of the pavement that exists on the property today. If you recall, we'll go back to this a little bit more busy illustration. You'll see that the existing edge of pavement, even though at one time it went even further, today it runs beyond where we're proposing to site the building. So all of this pavement is now uncovered. So this provides the ability for pollutants to just roll down into the James Brook, whereas similar to 124, we'll be putting all of the parking for the residential units under a roof with only a few parking spaces in the back of the property to try to maximize as much parking, not to the extent that I showed you in that special permit drawing with the valet, but we still want to provide parking for the mixed-use commercial tenants and activity that will take place on both properties as well. So what we're doing is we're taking advantage of some of this back area, but still pulling back the pavement on both the westerly line and the easterly line and adding landscape that Jen will talk about a little bit in more detail in a minute. So the proposal at both sides has been essentially to reduce the building footprint at 124 and reduce the impervious, reduce the amount of open air parking, and increase the amount of open space and landscape as well. At 84, we are increasing the building footprint, but we're substantially reducing the amount of open air pavement. So we're essentially trading what we call polluted runoff with clean runoff. So instead of having vehicles parking outside with the potential for contaminants to wash down into the James Brook, we're eliminating that impervious surface and we're putting in roof with crushed stone at the back end of the lot to provide some pervious surface on that end. So again, at 87, we're reducing paved areas by about almost 11,000 square feet, and overall, we're looking at a total reduction in impervious between both properties at about 5,000 square feet, with a total reduction in pavement in the vicinity of 28,000 square feet. So we're substantially reducing the amount of pavement. That's really the big benefit from an environmental standpoint. As Adam mentioned, this did go through an extensive peer review with the planning board process for stormwater management. Weston and Sampson put together a comprehensive review of our submittal, our stormwater calculations, our operation and maintenance plan, our construction prevention pollution plan, and we've resolved any comments that they had, and they currently have no outstanding issues with respect to that. DEP has also, because this is a mixed-use project, we had to submit a stormwater management report to them as well, and they have recently issued a DEP number, and they did not have issue any further comments either. Part of this project, as Adam mentioned, is really a benefit to make all the buildings that exist today flood resistant and flood compliant with respect to FEMA guidelines and the Massachusetts Building Code. So with that, we're essentially allowing the water to pass through these buildings with flood openings at 124, and over at 87, there'll be open wall construction with openings along the west, south, and easterly sides to allow the flood waters to pass through. This is a different property as it relates to the flood, in that this is controlled by a tide gate structure, as some of you may be familiar with, over adjacent to the Veterans Lot. So the tidal influence is completely different on this side of Elm Street along the James Brook than it is on the harbor side. The harbor side is much higher in elevation, but that is direct oceanfront, whereas the James Brook is controlled by a tide gate. So that's a completely different behavior as it relates to the mean high tide and the fluctuation during a storm event. Overall, getting back to stormwater, we do reduce the amount of peak flow and rate of runoff in volume in the 2, 10, and 100-year storm events. All these properties are on the town water and sewer, so there's no strain to municipal services. In fact, as a result of this project, we'll be actually reducing the amount of demand on the wastewater due to the reduction in the room count compared to what the hotel is. So there's no expansion of demand there. As it relates to construction, as I mentioned, we do have erosion controls in place and a sedimentation control plan as part of this application. We've also put in a stormwater pollution prevention plan as part of our stormwater permit. But essentially what we're proposing here is to have sedimentation control around the perimeter of the site during construction. This will most likely be fenced off with siltation fabric around the upland side. This will have probably a combination of silt fence and siltation barrier. And we'll have construction entrances at both sides of the street. Another benefit from a traffic management standpoint that has less to do with conservation, but we're closing a number of curb cuts that exist today. We're reducing 3 openings and down to 1. Right now there are 4 curb cuts around 124 Elm. We're going to isolate that to a single entrance. So that in itself will reduce the amount of construction debris and activity onto Elm Street, but that will be mitigated with a construction entrance. With that, I think I will pass it on to Jen to go over the landscape plan, and then we can circle back to questions for myself or anybody else on the team. So with that, Jen, if you'd like to walk through the landscape.
Okay, so the planting is roughly organized into 3 categories: the public park, the private gardens, and the street frontage zones. The landscape that's mostly within the public park falls within the resource area, so that 100-foot setback from the seawall at 124 and the 200-foot setback from the brook at 87 Elm. And all of the planting within the resource area is native, and it also references 2 of the guidelines that were provided to us, the principal native plant species for the South Shore and the Cohasset Conservation Commission plant selection for coastal banks. The plants were chosen to be salt tolerant, wind tolerant, and also to be able to withstand periodic inundation in the event of major storm events. The planting within the resource area, John mentioned that we've been very careful about the view corridor on Margin Street, and there are 2 trees outside of the view corridor. We've chosen pitch pine for their open canopy and open branching structure, and feeling that people can definitely see through the, we'll be able to have clear views to the harbor, but also have a chance to frame that view a little bit. We used shrubs within the resource area from the plant lists to help delineate between public and private, and also making sure that the shrubs that we chose were a little bit shorter so that then views could be maintained across the entire project site. And then we also use lawn in areas where we feel that there's the highest user value and the highest potential for program within that public park. Within the private gardens, there's a couple of different mixes. Some mixes are more for the sunny side, so the southern edge of 124 north, and shady mixes for the northern edges of 124 south. We've chosen plants that provide visual interest and higher habitat value, and thinking about things like birds and butterflies, that type of visual interest. Using trees and shrubs to help screen views where may be more desired, such as where you might have a transformer, and using trees and shrubs to also help frame views and open up the views. And then along the street frontage zone, using trees and shrubs to help create a clear rhythm, and to also create definition along the building facades, thinking about all season interest, and then again being mindful of shade, wind, and silt. So if there's any other questions, happy to answer them. But in the meantime, I think John or Adam, if you want to.
Thank you, Jen. I'll just close with one last item as well that Adam mentioned, that we've obviously been through the Planning Board, Cohasset Zoning Board of Appeals, and we'll be going through the Mass DEP Chapter 91 license process, whereas the property at 124 Elm Street is subject to a Chapter 91 license. So that is something that we will, we are actively pursuing, and the obtaining an order of conditions will be part of that as well. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Jennifer, I very much appreciate your choice of plants because I was the one who authored the list. So you chose very well from the list that I put together a number of years ago. I do have two questions though. What do you plan in terms of irrigation? Because we have some very, very dry July and August. All right. How do you see your need for supplemental irrigation here?
Honestly, we haven't really gotten to the irrigation, but I think that we need, we typically provide irrigation for our projects and would coordinate that as the project develops.
What exactly does that mean? Are you anticipating sinking a well to give you what I call relatively inexpensive good water, or will you be using the town water? How do you see that happening?
So I can speak to that a little bit. We don't anticipate sinking a well at this time. However, where we don't have septic systems, it really depends on probably through our construction. I mean, siting a well at either one of these sites will probably be a challenge, quite frankly. So it would probably be town water, but that could be something that could change.
Well, I mean, your choice of our local indigenous plants obviates the need for a lot of water because they're used to growing in the condition that we have here in the South Shore. So they're not moisture demanding plants in general, all right? So that's very positive. The other question I had, and John, you're aware of this, as you read through the rear third or rear quarter of the Cohasset wetland regulations, you find words that look down on lawn being put in the 50-foot and the 100-foot buffer zone. Because I guess a few reasons. One, most lawns are not natural species. They're imported from other parts of the country. They require chemicals, which we don't allow. We don't want to have fertilizers there. And there's just a lot of maintenance. And there are a lot of nowadays, what modern, what I would call ecologically sound ways of covering spaces with various beach grasses, various drought tolerant plantings and all that. Are you set on having lawn for the purpose of play and people walking? Or are you open to doing something, a bit more ecologically sound possibly?
So we would like to use lawn in some certain key locations in order to satisfy the passive programming portion of the park. And so thinking that this is a place for people to be able to walk and promenade, but also to be able to have picnics or coffee in the morning, and a place to meet and gather. So I think that we would want some judicious use of lawn, but maybe we can look at reducing overall area.
So this is really, you see it as a lawn come social area, a place for a social gathering and this type of thing, other than just people, lawn to mow on and walk by. You see it being useful.
That's the hope, right?
Okay.
Kite flying, that type of thing would be nice.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Eric, earlier, this side where the lawn is being sited on this property is within the quote public space that is looking to get created is by pulling these buildings off of the harbor. That's really the big benefit that we think this project provides by obviously opening up the harbor walk, but also creating some open space adjacent to the harbor that doesn't exist today.
Sounds good. Okay. I'll pass it on to someone else.
Yeah, I think part of the project overall, intent was to have part of the land more accessible to the public. Hence they open up the sidewalk that goes from Elm around to Border to allow pedestrians to walk through there, actually stop use that, sit and use that lawn area to enjoy the views of the harbor. So I think that, that was the intent of having that open space.
John, would you clarify, please, the requirements of Chapter 91 and where the limits of this development satisfy versus where the limits of this development are more in keeping with what you're saying, which is to pull the building away from the edge?
John,
So,
would it be? I'm sorry.
I was going to hand this off to Adam so that I don't misspeak any legalese with respect to Chapter 91, if that's okay, Adam.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Well, thank you, Mr. McFarland. A portion of the property at 124 Elm Street is within DEP jurisdiction. And as a result, we're going to need a Chapter 91 license. The Chapter 91 license will encompass the entire pedestrian access network and the public park. And a small portion of the building does encroach within jurisdiction. That portion of the building is designed to be a facility of public accommodation and will be open to the public. And that is the corner of the building to the north of the site, the northeast corner of the site. It also includes the outdoor patio area. So the project's been designed to comply in all respects with Chapter 91. We've reviewed this extensively with DEP. As John mentioned, we're in the process of submitting our Chapter 91 application. DEP has only given us encouraging words that the project meets the requirements of Chapter 91.
Well, I'm happy that that's the case. All I'm looking for, though, is just an understanding by all the board members that while what John just presented was that the building is moving back for the purpose of giving the public opportunity to utilize the waterfront, but this is it's not out of the goodness of one's heart. It's actually by code that this has to happen, correct?
I'd actually disagree with you in some respects. We're providing much more public access than would be required under Chapter 91. All that would be required under Chapter 91 would be lateral access along the shoreline. And we couldn't have certain activities within the water dependent use zone, which is approximately in the site, approximately 40 feet from the seawall. But because the town adopted its overlay bylaw that requires more, and candidly, George and Ted wanted to provide more here, this far exceeds what would be required under Chapter 91. And I'd respectfully suggest it far exceeds what's actually required under zoning. So I think they've done more than the minimum regulatory requirement.
And can you clarify, is any of this property filled tidelands?
So that's why it's within Chapter 91 jurisdiction.
Okay. Because
again, it's been licensed as filled tidelands for decades, if not much longer than that. So again, looking only at 124 Elm Street, and we are getting a little away from wetlands issues because we're happy to answer your questions. Essentially, the eastern third is within jurisdiction because those are filled tidelands, and that's what creates Chapter 91 jurisdiction.
Yeah, so just to add to that, the reason, and I think Adam articulated it well, obviously this is not in the water. Typically a Chapter 91 license is to use the waters of the United States. You're getting a license from the Commonwealth signed by the governor to use waters of the United States. Their jurisdiction also goes inland where there's a historic filled tideland or a historic high water mark. And so we have to do the research before this project started to say, is there a historic high water mark that actually went inland? Because that now brings the property within Chapter 91 jurisdiction. So it's not because we're doing a dock or putting a waterfront, hanging a cantilever boardwalk. It's because there's an old line that passes through this property, and that's what we're licensing.
Can someone comment on the nature of the fill?
I'm sorry?
Do you guys know what the nature of the fill is behind the seawall? What's in there?
Well, there was some borings done, obviously, around the parking lot, and they actually ran into shallow to bedrock, some materials, they ran into ledge. But where the building is, we can only surmise. I mean, we have some historical mapping that shows that there were a number of wharfs that came off of this area. And where the Chapter 91 license, or where the Chapter 91 jurisdiction, the high water line, it sort of comes in like here. I think probably a long, long time ago, the James Brook opened up to an open water here. And right now there's a pipe that picks up the James Brook and runs underneath the parking lot to the tide gate. This was most likely open at one time, so the water line came into that inlet. There were some finger piers that came off into the water. There were a number of mixed use. This is a pretty active waterfront. There were buildings in the water a long time ago that are now just water. So it's hard to, but there is a lot of shallow to bedrock still areas in here. We'll find out when the building comes down, but the building does have a basement, so it's not just sitting on a slab. A portion of it does have a basement.
Right, and I would just add that this is historic filling from the 1800s and early 1900s, and have been there, as I said, decades and decades.
Yeah, still, there's loads of, say, creosoted logs in here, piles. I just wonder what that impact might have on the harbor once it starts to get disturbed, once the loading is changed on the property. And are you going to be lighter or heavier? Are you going to see some compaction? I mean, what are the consequences of that? Do you have a geotechnical study of this by any chance?
Yes, a geotechnical report was prepared.
Great. So you must know something about the subsurface.
Well, as I mentioned, there were borings done around the the existing parking lot. Not obviously, the building takes up a large portion of the lot, as you saw on the previous plan. So what they found was actually ledge around the parking lot.
Ledge or stone fill? I mean, how do you know?
No, it was a refusal. So they hit some large refusal. So
there was a
this
small
is Jay Pimpari. I had a question on the elevations here. So as you have mentioned, there were some test borings done around the parking lot, etc. Maybe if we could switch off of this planting plan and go back to one of the plans that talks about the garage elevation, etc. And that, I don't know if that's a good one, but I believe looking at the old plan, I can't read this because it's so far away, but it looks like the garage slab was at about 9 feet. There you go. And so as I understand looking at the plan here, there's really, during the demolition of the project and the removal of, as you say, during the current building now has a basement, there's going to be some excavation being done. And clearly there's going to be the need for some fill to come in. Do you know what is the actual elevation of the, I guess the top of the walkway now, or the existing like brick patio area that's currently in place now? My question that I'm getting to is how much fill is going to be needed to be brought in underneath that garage slab at 9 feet, and what is the actual current elevation now? Again, as I assume here, there's going to be really there are no basements. The only excavation really is, as I understand, is for the removal of the basement area after the demolition of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the garage slab elevation is going to be closely matching the existing ground elevation. So the existing ground of the parking lot ranges, but it essentially, the grade over at the town, we'll call it the town parking lot, that will remain the same. Okay. So no changes to that. The curb cut will remain the same. And then as we work our way up around the property, this comes up in elevation to elevation 9. This is where the top of the garage slab will be, pretty much sitting on the existing grade as far as elevation. So there'll be a cut on this side because the ground slopes up as it comes up Margin Street. So this will be a little bit of a cut.
Mm.
This will be pretty much at grade. So there's not a lot of fill being brought on site, other than for when we take the building out. Let me back up this grading, but I just want to show some grading.
So there's really, although there's a need for some fill in order to fill in the actual basement area, you're really not even going to have enough. You can't use your cut for your fill because the cut is mainly 4 inches or so of pavement. I assume that's going to be completely hauled off site. And then you almost be down to grade or for some crushed stone or crushed gravel to lay the slab anyway.
Right. I mean, this is where the grade will be coming up. This is where the existing building is. Mm-hmm. So we'll be bringing the grade that we'll have the walkway that'll be essentially level. It'll pitch slightly away from the coastal bank, and then the grades will come up to match the street elevation. So it's whatever to tie in to the existing road network and from the seawall. So we're not talking about dramatic changes. It's really just to meet. We're keeping the garage slab pretty much at the grade of the existing parking lot, and we'll just be grading from the seawall to match, the first floor elevations of these, which are above the flood.
Right. And
over here, we're sort of doing the same thing. We're keeping the garage slab pretty close to what the existing parking lot is, and it'll slope up to meet Elm Street. But there's no fill or cut going on back in here at all.
Okay. Well, that'll certainly help with the construction. Since we're talking about elevations, et cetera, can you just describe a little bit as far as the pass-through under the garage slab or et cetera, when you talked about stormwater runoff, et cetera, and trying to manage that? You mentioned there were some pass-through holes, or how is that going to work?
So the only runoff that will be coming off of this side primarily will be the roof runoff. There'll be a small piece here because this slopes down. The street will pass by the entrance. So there'll be a small area here that'll come into the garage. This will be the garage that will be open, and you'll pass through to get to a few parking spaces in the back. These will have open walls, mostly for flood protection, to enable the flood and for ventilation of the garage. So as far as stormwater, this will all be roof runoff that will come out in daylight into these landscaped areas on both sides. And this will be all crushed stone in the back at grade.
Does the roof extend beyond the
elevation's 3 feet there? Isn't mean high water about 3.8 here? Something along those lines?
Mean high water is not that elevation on this side, because this is controlled by a tide gate.
Mean high elevation on the other side. In any case, let's say I don't know whether the street can flood or not, but if it does, it's going to fill that garage up over there, isn't it?
No, again, we're matching the existing grades, what's out there today, so that doesn't flood on a tidal basis. In fact, we've had some pretty heavy storms over the past month that we've been watching this pretty closely, where there has been flooding on the coastal side, and there's no flooding over here, and that's because there's a tide gate that controls that. So we're not putting a structure really anywhere that's not. We're essentially putting a roof over the existing parking lot.
John, you've described on across the street there the garage slab and the fact that there's the stormwater runoff with daylight out onto the proposed lawns. Can you describe a little bit more on the Elm Street side as far as stormwater runoff and where that goes, infiltration, drainage, municipal system, etc.?
So on the 124 side?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So there is no infiltration other than we've cited an infiltration area really for the lawn area to drain the lawn. But we're reducing pavement. We're reducing impervious. So as a result, we're bringing runoff rates and volumes down. So we're not adding any infiltration to the site. What we're doing is we're collecting the clean roof runoff and directing it to the existing stormwater system that exists today. Right now, everything drains down to a collection system that drains into the harbor. The James Brook has a separate drainage network that passes the brook through the tide gates. But right now there's drainage that's on the site, and we'll be reconfiguring that to tie into the new buildings. So all the landscaped areas naturally everything pretty much, you know, the site drains essentially towards the village for this half, and this drains towards the harbor. So almost split right down the middle. It almost drains, half of it drains in that direction, half it drains in that direction. So, but we'll have some catch basins that will pick up drainage. The majority of the drain network in this area drains into a system that drains into the harbor.
You had a diagram there talking about the level lawn area, which is a separate little schematic in one of the drawings that
right
mentioned the 4-inch. It actually had some more further detail about a 4-inch perforated pipe, 6 inches of crushed stone underneath it, filter fabric between between that and the strata, and 6 inches of lumen seed. Can you just pull it up or describe that a little bit further as far as the level of detail on that, or why the?
Sure, I'll show you the location here, and then I can flip to the detail sheet. But this is the area where that is being sited, and it's beneath the lawn area. And the idea was just to make sure that things get drained, that there's proper drainage in these areas. These are, again, public spaces. We want to make them functional, and we want to make them low maintenance. We don't want to have anything that's not going to function properly. So we added this infiltration area.
So during, say, heavy rain events, it doesn't become a slushy field.
Exactly. And so here's the level lawn section.
Right, correct.
That we've added. We've added this detail where it'll be lawn on the top, and then we'll have a crushed stone with a perforated pipe that will drain this area.
Mm-hmm.
And that will, when this fills up, this will overflow into the drainage system that's on site that will collect and connect to the existing 24-inch outlet that daylights into the wall. So we're not adding any new outlets to the wall. We're just reconfiguring the existing drainage that's on site to get it there, and we're adding this infiltration area to provide a little bit more.
Okay. You also had a schematic there of the drainage manholes, and I had some, if you could pull that one up, I did have some questions on that as well. That,
sure.
If I'm reading that correctly, is that a 5-foot diameter? I forget which one it was. A 5-foot diameter manhole at its peak, and how deep is it?
It's 4 feet.
4 feet. Okay.
Yep.
So an individual could actually get down in there if need be.
Yes, that's hence the manhole.
Yeah. So, and how deep is that? Or how deep are those?
Well, they vary. It depends on where the specific drain elevation is, where the invert is. But these are typically about 6 feet in depth, but they vary. I mean, catch basins can be shallower. It depends on where the outlet drains are.
So those are existing drainage manholes now?
No, this is a detail for a new drain manhole.
Okay.
For the new drain connections that we're proposing on site to collect the network of piping.
Okay. Can you just describe on the plan where exactly some of those manholes are?
Yep. So we'll have one here and here. These are the DMHs, the drain manhole.
Yep.
So we'll have a series of small inlets to capture runoff that comes off of this walkway. So we'll pick that up with some small area drains, and then we'll connect the roof drainage to that so that we're not daylighting a lot of the roof drainage into these public areas. We want to actually connect the clean roof and put it into a pipe network. But where we have pipes that connect with one another, that's where you want to have a manhole so that you have a good clean junction chamber so that you can access them and clean them out and if necessary and get access to the pipe networks. You don't want to link these up with catch basins when you can avoid it. So at the primary junctions, you put manholes.
So you're basically you're saying that the drainage system of the purple is collecting clean runoff.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no pavement, where we have vehicular traffic or anything like that.
And so to switch gears a little bit to talk about the pavement and the manholes or catch basins in the pavement area, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's an existing catch basin here that we've identified. We want to make sure that that is adequate. Inspect that, make sure that there's a hood for stormwater for water quality. Anything that's new that we put in a hood to provide an oil water separator mechanism. We do have a catch basin, one catch basin here. This is an open air area between the two buildings that connects the parking. So we'll have a catch basin here. And the catch basins that we've designed are deep sump catch basins. So they have a 4-foot sump. It's called a deep sump catch basin, and these are the hoods. So what happens is water flows in, sediment collects, it's called the primary treatment, and then as the water level rises, it drains into the pipe. But if there's any level of grit or grime or essentially oil, that will float to the top, and the clean water will go up the hood and drain out the pipe. So that's the reason that you have these hoods on a outlet to a drain structure. Okay. So you have the sedimentation that collects here and the oiling.
Would you happen to have an O&M plan for something like that, or is it only? And is there only a plan that only goes in when there's catastrophic failure on it and there's backup and/or overflow?
No, so we have an operation and maintenance plan that's submitted as part of the stormwater permit, but all these structures will need to be maintained, cleaned out on a regular basis. Just like, if we have a small outdoor parking lot, they need to be swept and maintained, which they will be. This is, the benefit of mixed use projects is that you have a lot of attention being paid to the facilities because you have both residents and non-residential use.
I guess just sticking on the drainage there as well, you mentioned the oil water separator, but I did also see on the plan there was an oil and grease trap. It looked like floor drains. Can you just show that and describe that a little bit? What is that?
Yeah, so for anything that's inside, any drainage that gets collected inside a roofed structure, those drains get sent to an oil water separator, separate from what you would have on a catch basin for an open air structure, and then that would drain to the municipal sewer. So that doesn't get collected and drained to the stormwater system. That gets essentially more treatment and gets sent to the municipal sewer.
So the garage slab floor drains go to the oil water separator and then off to municipal system.
Correct.
Is that the same for across the street as well?
Yes, if you had any drains that are inside a building.
Okay, is that on the plan on the across the street? I just say across the street, so then I know it's easier for me to say that. There you are, on where your cursor is, correct?
Yeah. So there's there's a sewer connection here that would get connected into this.
Can you just blow that up a little bit, John? I'm sorry, it's just hard
Sure.
to see there. Okay.
John, regarding the stormwater plan, I know you had mentioned that Weston Sampson peer reviewed it before the planning board, I believe. Is the version of the stormwater plan that we have in the stormwater report that we have in this middle to the Conservation Commission pre-peer review, post-peer review?
Post-peer review.
Okay, excellent. And
you have the most current.
Excellent. Would there be any way to get the Conservation Commission a copy of the Weston Sampson peer review memos or letters or anything?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I just think it would be helpful. We certainly don't need to, relitigate anything that has already been discussed or reviewed. So I think it would be helpful to just have that information to look at.
Did I hear the word litigate? I hope I didn't hear the word litigate.
I can't help it. It's part of the natural.
It's part of your character now.
Exactly.
John, can I ask you a question? Getting off all the sewers and all that. You and I have worked together for 3 years. I've never heard of something called a degraded area. There's a new term you're throwing here that
Right.
I have not run into before. What is that?
It's an area. It's really a term that's associated with working in a riverfront.
Yeah.
So it's essentially synonymous with redevelopment. So we're working in this is a redevelopment project because we're working in areas that have been already developed or they've been degraded.
Yeah. So, and it refers to what then? I mean,
it refers to the property over at 87 Elm Street.
Okay.
So as we talked about earlier, this has historically been a parking lot. This property. Okay. So we don't have a virgin, salt meadow. We don't have, a field of trees. We have. Okay. All right. So basically, you're referring to an area that's already been worked on. I think someone just took over my screen.
Yeah, Angela, let me see if I can take her off. Angela, you just started to do a share screen. Hold on here.
Don, can you tell us about the wall? Are you rebuilding the wall, and what's the plans along that?
So this proposal does not have anything to reconstruct the wall. The only discussions we've had on the wall with the town is, and perhaps George can add any more color to this, but we understand that over on the veterans end, so the area, and I'll pull up a plan again. Actually, I'll need to share screen. So this is the Veterans Memorial down here. So the seawall runs all along here. Okay, this is pretty much the outlet structure is right here. So this is more riprap, and then the wall sort of begins somewhat after the sidewalk, and it runs along here. But there's a section of wall adjacent, on both sides of the tide gate that I understand that there's some discussion about redoing some of that to add memorial plaques to the top of the wall. But for the rest of the wall, there's no plan currently to do anything. It's been.
So, John, the walkway would be, I don't know how thick that wall is, whatever it is, a couple feet. The walkway would be on the land side. And what does that walkway consist of? Is it a asphalt pavement, and how wide is that walkway?
Yeah, so we've identified it as impervious for our drainage calculations. I'm not sure if a specific surface. I think it would most likely be an impervious surface due to the public nature and the fact that we want to keep it ADA compliant. And we want smooth surface and easily to maintain. Yeah. I think it's set at a 10-foot width at this moment.
John, at the north end of that walk, the seawall currently has a concrete block extension on it, probably up to 5 feet in height. And if I'm reading the contours correctly, I assume that the new elevations are actually to get below the original seawall height. Is that correct?
It's to get below the top of that concrete extension, yes.
What's the elevation of the street across this? The street opposite from that north side. There's a street there which isn't marked on this document.
That's Stockbridge Street, and the elevation's around 7.
It's 7. And it looks like when I walked it around there, it did look like there was some flow coming across the street into the harbor from there.
Yeah, I do think there's drainage that comes from that neighborhood into the harbor.
For sure.
And what will the elevations be over? I mean, how will it affect this? What will the elevation? Will
we won't be doing anything down there. That's off property, so we'll carry the wall to our property and then tie it back into the sidewalk that will wrap around our property.
Is the wall part of the property, or is it not? You said you're not going to be touching the wall, but is it part of this property?
Essentially, it is. So, you know, again, we go back to Chapter 91. There's waters of the United States. There's private property rights.
Right.
Essentially, it's the lot line.
So that's the lot line. Well, when you excavate and take away the building, I mean, I'm just wondering the stability of the wall. And
so that'll all have to get looked at while, you know, because we don't know what's exactly underneath the building. This will be controlled construction, so there'll be engineers on site, architects, so things will be monitored closely throughout construction. And that's not just by choice, that's going to be required by the lenders and all of the folks that are tied into this project. So
John, how old do you estimate that wall is? Seawall?
I don't know. I think it's got various ages to it, quite frankly. I think the concrete section that's on top is, I'm sure, much newer than the stone revetment that's beneath it.
I went to the Historical Society to follow up on a project which was to redo the salt marsh grass in front of the hotel. Is possibly part of this project. And we got some photographs of that very wall. And the oldest one we get was 110 years old. And the wall was there 110 years ago. So it's been there for a very long period of time. And various things have taken place behind it and on top of it, John. But the wall is there, has resisted and put up with hurricanes and high waters and everything else. So it's a solid thing. So, and our project to put in a salt marsh grass frontage in front, which we thought was what was originally there, like you find in a lot of harbors. We couldn't find any evidence that there was any salt marsh in this area because it's probably pushed way back. So,
John, we've talked about the unknowns with the excavation, which is obvious with most projects. Is there a demolition plan in place, or a excavation plan, construction plan? I guess I'll call it a demo plan for the project here.
So nothing different than what is in this package. So there's not a demolition plan per se.
Is that normal, John? Not to have one?
Well, I guess every project, varies. I'm sure with the final building permit plan set, there'll be more details, and that will likely have a demolition plan.
I would assume that there's obviously all of the pavement and building structure, et cetera, is obviously going to be hauled off-site to a location. So I think it would be prudent to have some type of just a demo plan. It doesn't need to be elaborate, but some form of a demolition plan to ensure that the digging, the excavation, et cetera, is done accordingly and is hauled away, trucked away, compliance, with wherever it's going. And I don't need to know exactly where it's going, but it would be good to have a demo plan on site.
Is this big enough to require an asbestos inspection and permits for that?
Yeah, I'm sure with any demolition that will be in accordance with the building code, they'll definitely have to go through a survey and an abatement process for that. Yeah.
John, time is running along. Could we organize a site visit? Because I know personally, I would benefit a great deal from a site visit. I don't do very well with your diagrams. I'm not an engineer. Would you be able to put something together for those commissioners who would like to do a detailed walk around?
Sure. Are you asking me or Jeff to organize that?
I'm asking, well, I suppose I'm asking you and Jeff. Jeff would be the one to do the detail organizing. But that's something you could possibly put together sometime in the next 2 weeks, I hope.
Yeah, sooner than later.
Yeah,
we'd like to keep this moving along. As I said, this is tied to a number of other permits, so we'd like to keep this moving as expeditiously as possible.
Jeff, do you think you could? Is Jeff there?
Yeah, I was just going to say. So, maybe while we're all here, we can just take a quick poll of when people will be available, so we can get as many of us down there at once for this.
Yeah.
So I'll start with John. When would you be available? Early next week.
Yes.
Do you have a preference?
Tuesday is a good day for me at this point.
Okay. Are there any commissioners that cannot meet sometime on Tuesday next week?
Tuesday is good for me. I could do Tuesday morning.
Good for me. Morning's better than afternoon, Jeff.
I believe I could do Tuesday morning.
Okay.
I can't do afternoon, but I could do morning.
Okay.
Looks like a winner, Jeff.
Jeff, the earlier the better, please, for me.
Okay.
So any suggestions for times?
8:30.
8 o'clock?
8 o'clock is
8
better.
o'clock?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. 8's fine. Tuesday?
John, is that okay?
Yes, that's good for me. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so
I could
that's what we'll plan on, 8 o'clock Tuesday morning.
I'm just going to also ask Ted. Ted, is 8 o'clock Tuesday good for you?
Yes, that will work.
I had another question regarding this. I mean, in a way, it's almost like two projects. I know you're looking at one project, but is there a street reconfiguration, a road reconfiguration between these projects for Elm, or is there a plan? Because there's going to be a lot of activity here, and granted that intersection's not a great one.
So there'll actually be less activity from a traffic standpoint at 124. As I mentioned, we're closing 3 of the 4 curb cuts that are over there today, but that's sort of a broader discussion. Since we don't have any control over the public right-of-way, we can't propose any changes to the street. However, this has been discussed at the planning board level, and this applicant has committed to work with the town to be an active participant in any proposals that the town has. I know that there's a committee in place that's looking at this intersection to try to improve the streetscape and the connectivity between Elm Street and Margin Street. And I don't want to speak for Ted or George or Adam, but I believe that they have committed to be part of that.
So, no. Okay. Thank you.
John, a couple more questions on my. I know we certainly, as our chair had mentioned, talking about time, etc. But Question as far as there's going to be obviously with these large slab areas of concrete, going to be a lot of concrete pouring here. Are there designated washout areas for the concrete trucks on this plan?
No, there's not, and I'm not sure that there would be on 87 at all, but we can certainly give that some thought and maybe add that, you know, to a, I think the demo plan / construction sequencing.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Again, just outlining for the contractors, you know, designated concrete. And I know things change on construction sites virtually all the time here, but we certainly just don't want the trucks being washed out towards the harbor area near drains, etc. So if we had designated washout areas for concrete, that would be great. Mm-hmm. And then my other question was with respect to the planting plan, going back to Jennifer here. Thank you for the in-depth drawing here and the color coordination, etc. My question as far as the planting size for some of the trees. And so I didn't see that was mentioned here. I see the different species, which is wonderful and great. Is there something with respect to size there on any of these, whether it be 1 inch caliber, 2 inch caliber, 8 feet, 10 feet, as far as height goes, etc.? And so I'll throw that out to the landscape architect.
We can certainly circle back with that information. We didn't provide that in this round. I have some desires for size, but should probably talk with Ted and George about it before committing to it publicly.
Okay.
I think it would be. I think just in the hope of moving this project along, I think plant sizes and plant quantities are important.
Sure, of course.
John, two other items I think that would also help with this is I do think that the seawall is an important feature here. And it seems that concrete extension is just something that they put in for security or whatever. I'm not really sure. Maybe they were getting floods at some time. I'm not sure. But it would be useful to see a couple spot elevations at the top of the seawall itself, not the extension, but the historic seawall. It's so that we can see how that relates to the project overall. The other thing is the parking at the rear of 87. I mean, the planting plan shows the spaces. You showed us kind of an overall layout. But it is concerning that although there may have been a time when the asphalt went down to the edge, we now have a condition where you have overgrowth down there. I'm not sure whether or not there's asphalt under it or not, but it does go right to the edge of James Brook. And I think it's worth kind of understanding more how that particular area figures into the overall parking scheme. I mean, obviously from my perspective, the least you can do in that area, the better. So if you can show us kind of a layout of how the parking works there, and so we have a better understanding of exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. They are shown in this plan, but we can further articulate that so that it's clear.
Okay. And those are and if you just slide down again. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go back to this.
That's all right. Let's just call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 on the one side, 2 on the other. So
correct.
Do those 7 spaces, are those required to meet the parking requirements for this project?
Yes. Yeah, these are commercial spaces that meet our demand for the overall project.
I'm sorry, when you say commercial spaces, what do you mean by that?
So these are spaces that will be used. The spaces inside the building are the residents. There's one residential space outside in this area, and the rest will be used for the non-residential use, so the commercial use.
This is the parking's 1 story below street level?
Yes. Not even a full story, but it's pretty much at grade what's there today, but it's below the street level.
Well, it's quite a bit below street level, right?
Well, it's 5 feet.
Okay. And is that parking coupled with the parking that's shown in the street, or is the what's in the street not part of that count?
No, nothing in the street we can use for the count. That's
all right.
public.
So you're saying you're required to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 spaces for this commercial development?
That's correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces.
Yeah, but you said 1 was residential.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the parking count. I was just specifically saying what these spaces are designated for, but these spaces are all part of our overall parking count.
Mm-hmm.
So we need these spaces.
Okay.
John, I have one question just for my understanding of the project. From James Brook, you said is diverted underneath the street going over to the gate under the parking lot in Elm.
Yep.
And the parking lot is the public parking lot that it's underneath, is that right?
Both, actually. This is the property line.
Okay.
This is the property line that goes through this is the public side.
Mm-hmm.
This is the private side, but it's essentially a sort of a shared parking lot.
Okay, that's what I wasn't understanding. And is that getting expanded more than it is currently? It's hard without seeing
we're adding a couple of spaces to this, but essentially we're keeping this parking the way it is, and these spaces are all there. We're adding a couple spaces to the end.
Okay. And how is it diverted underneath? What is the structure that's diverting the brook under? Culvert, I guess?
There are 2 large concrete culverts.
Yep.
Essentially large concrete pipes that
Okay.
carry the water underneath the street and to the tide gate structure.
Thank you.
So John, is that just one parking place with a handicap, with the striped area being a handicap unloading area, or is that a space as well?
That's a space as well. Let me go to the this is probably the best, just to zoom into this parking.
John, I will applaud you for putting in the sign for the handicap spot in the schematic, mentioning that the actual sign will be set in a 3,000 PSI concrete footing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. So there's no handicap spot over here today. So we're adding a handicap accessible spot here. So that's what the striping is. These 2 spaces over here are taken up because they're generators. I'm going to go back because sometimes these plans are.
Are the generators going to stay in the area as is?
Yes.
Okay.
So even though that space is bisected by the property line, that particular space is part of your parking count?
Yes, the space is.
Is there an agreement with the town for that?
So the town is aware, before we started this project, the selectmen were made aware that the town right now doesn't have an easement over this private property for the James Brook and other, use, they essentially don't have access legally to these spaces. So it's an agreement that easements, and this was voted on by the selectmen, I think it may even went to town meeting, that an agreement will take place between these 2 parties to work out access between these two lots.
Gentlemen, we have a number of projects ahead of us. We will be coming back in 2 weeks' time to pick up where we left off, all right?
So, Eric, can I just jump in for a sec?
Go ahead.
So just from, when we were first given this proposal, there was some talk about, because of the size of the project, potentially scheduling a follow-up meeting for what would be not on a regular day that we would have a hearing. Does anybody still feel that this project needs to have its own hearing date, or does everybody agree that we can, review this during the normal scheduled hearing dates?
The only thing that I would throw out there, and I think, it's unfortunate that, as you all know, and some of you, John, you might even be back in front of us here in a little bit, that we do have other hearings. We meet every other Thursday. I would propose that potentially we could, I know that Angela has already done the public hearings for 6:30, but if there is any potential way that we could maybe continue this to say 6 o'clock, if that's possible, and at least get at least from 6 to 7 or 7:30, and in realizing we're going to have some long nights here on the back end of it, it's inevitable. The only other way around that is to have a separate meeting. But I think I think that we could probably do it if we started at 6 o'clock.
Jeff, how does Thursday 2 weeks from now look? Do we have a lot on the agenda?
There's 2 permit extension requests, 2 very straightforward RDAs, 1 stormwater permit, and then an NOI for a pool patio project.
It doesn't sound too bad. And we may have 2 more tonight that are extended or continued.
Possibly.
Well, this one.
Possibly, yeah.
I guess I would just throw out there in the interest of time to keep going.
I agree with you, Jay. If we can do it on a Thursday night and start early, that's fine with me. All right.
Yeah. If
anybody would have a problem at 6 if we start at 6 o'clock, or what about 5:30?
No, it's not 5:30.
Yeah, make it okay. 6 o'clock.
We could attempt 6 o'clock, but right now I don't have enough information to decide how long this is going to go for.
Yeah. I think for the moment of, all we're legally required to do is to continue the hearing to a certain date. So if we continue the hearing till
21st.
to the 21st, and then I would leave it up to Angela and or Jeff to discuss with the commissioners on a starting time, but to throw that out there that it would be an early starting time, potentially 5:45, 6 o'clock. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay.
And we'll be meeting on Tuesday at 8 o'clock, I believe, in front of the hotel. John?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes, Tuesday morning at 8 a.m.
Okay, great. Anything else, John?
That's it. So we'll plan for a site visit next Tuesday at 8 o'clock and a continued hearing for the 21st at 6 o'clock.
And thank you very much for the effort and time you and your team have put in. By the way, in front of me now, I have a letter from residents and abutters of Cohasset Harbor commenting on this project. I'd like to thank them for the thoughtful letter. For good or for worse, it's the kind of thing that we need to have because it keeps us in touch with local sentiment. And if any of you haven't read it, I believe it's on the OneDrive, okay? But to those people who spent the time, put it together and signing it, thank you very much. Okay, John, thank you. Next project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see.
I think I'm next.
Are you next, John?
Yes.
I'm getting my 88 Beach.
Can't get rid of me.
Already read it in. Okay, John.
Okay. If I share screen, I'll pull the plan up to keep things rolling.
Short and sweet.
So this is a continuation from the last meeting, and we were asked to do 2 specific things. This is a project at 88 Beach Street, and it includes a ramp and a float, and it includes the reconstruction of a garage that was demolished by some tree damage. So the first item that I was asked to do was to revisit the location of the ramp and float. And because we had originally planned to relocate some boulders that were adjacent to a patch of salt marsh, and Division of Marine Fisheries suggested that those boulders remain in place if they didn't need to get moved. And the discussion was, let's leave those in place and let's consider rotating the ramp and float to avoid that. And that's what we did. So we rotated the ramp and float, kept it the same dimensions, made notation that the float will have skid boards on it in accordance with the Division of Marine Fisheries letter. And that was the change on that end. Down at the garage end, we were asked to do some more survey to locate existing vegetation in the area. And we located 3 trees, one of which was right on the 100-foot buffer, one is outside. And the 2 that were closest to the building do need to get removed. The 3rd can stay. And we also identified a 6-inch cedar tree that falls within the alignment of the proposed driveway. So the plan is to replace those 3 trees within the 100-foot buffer outside the 50-foot with 3 trees that we identify on the plan.
John, would you mind sharing your screen and the plan for us? I apologize, sorry.
Oh, I thought I was sharing the whole time. I apologize.
No. That's okay. I can bring that up. Oh, good.
Oh, it's up. I sincerely apologize. I was talking along and pointing to this plan as if you were all seeing it.
Yeah, John, can you or Jeff magnify that a bit? There's no way I can understand what's going on there.
Sure. Is this okay?
Yeah.
So this is the proposed garage. We were asked to locate trees within the vicinity and any vegetation within the vicinity of the garage. We located these 3 trees, 2 of which need to be removed, and a 3rd, it's a 6-inch cedar tree that's located where the garage new driveway would go. This is sort of a patch of forsythia and call it overgrowth, sort of shrubbery. A large portion of that would also be removed. And what we're proposing is to put 3 new trees in an area where there's quite a bit of trees out here, but there is a patch that's open. We would like to keep them at a fair distance from the building because the reason this fell down in the first place is because these trees fell and destroyed the building.
John, do you have something for size of trees and type?
I don't, but we can certainly agree to a minimum 3-inch caliper native oak.
I would say 3 to 4 is probably a good size. Yeah, native oak, that's fine.
Eric, if you say 3 to 4, you get 3. If you want 4, say 4.
Okay, 4 to 5, we get 4, right?
That's right.
Is it
John, 4 to 5 it is, right?
Is it feasible to use a tree spade to move some of those trees? The ones you propose to cut?
They're too big.
Pardon me?
Is it feasible to use a tree spade to move those?
No, unfortunately.
These are very large.
Yeah, maybe the cedar, maybe.
Yeah, but the cedar won't do well if it's moved.
Yeah. So,
Tom, these are 22-inch trees, Tom.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a good feel for how tall they are. I've had trees as high as 15 feet moved with a spade, but if these are much more than that, then
these are taller than that. The cedar's shorter, but we fear that, as Chris said, they wouldn't survive.
They're large trees, Tom.
Okay.
The other item that we did was we rotated the ramp to avoid the boulders, as I previously described.
And your salt marsh grass, we're going to forget about that, right?
We're not going to touch that.
Yeah.
There's a little patch here, but this will span over that.
But you know, John, there was some literature that came out along with the meeting 2 weeks ago. That salt marsh grass migrates up and down the bank, depending on the time of year and, you know, the various other things. So it may be there right now. Come back in 10 years, it's probably 10 feet to the left. So it's very, very hard to build around a fixed position for the salt marsh grass, I think, because it's rather nomadic and does move where it wants. So, you know, we'll do the best we can. Okay. Anything else, gentlemen, man? Do we have someone want to make a proposal, please? Motion?
Eric, I would just suggest, I don't think there's anybody in the audience that has any comments on this, but just in case there is,
okay.
If they could just answer or ask in the Q&A. I haven't gotten any comments all night. One other thing too, I think, you know, with this, there should be the condition that the 3 trees be of whichever caliper it was. That was
4 to 5 inches.
4 to 5 inches. And, you know, I know John said oaks, but I don't know if we want to just leave it open to, you know, some tree from our approved list in case, you know, what they're proposing isn't available, or if the homeowner changes their mind and wants something else or to mix it up.
John, the existing trees we're taking out they're conifers, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, I mean, I think for lack of anything else, we ought to replace it with something from the conifer family. That's what's indigenous there, and that's part of the local flora.
That would be fine.
Are we all set then?
Hold on, John. You said that the dock is on skids. Is that, or the ramp is on skids? Is that right? It's not going to be anchored down. Is that right?
Correct.
There's no piles.
That's correct.
In it.
Yes.
Okay. So they're going to be doing they're going to hand do it. Well, actually, sorry. No, that's a ramp. It's a ramp. Okay. No, I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah. There's nothing.
Is so the condition is that just so before I'm happy to make a motion here, move this forward. Is everyone in agreement that well, what was proposed was the replacement or the installation of 3 trees of 45-inch caliber? Is everyone in agreement with that? That was what was proposed.
As matching the existing trees we're taking out in terms of their conifers.
I second that. So
all right,
4-inch trees.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't make that proposal, but I'll move it forward with a motion if there's no other questions.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Well, let's vote on that.
Well, let me make the motion first here. Jay Pimpari would like to make a motion to approve or issue an order of conditions for the project at 88 Beach Street with a specific condition that a planting or revised plan be submitted by, I guess, 1 week from today that just outlines or even documentation that outlines that the 3 trees that are going to be installed would be a 4 to 5-inch caliper from our approved planting list, specifically from the conifer family.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. Let's vote on it. Kathy Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, yay.
Eric Eisenhower, yay. Trish Grady?
Trish Grady, yay. Yep.
Okay. Chris McFarland?
Chris McFarland, yay.
Jay Pimpare?
Jay Pimpare, yes.
Marianne Weatherald?
Marianne Weatherald, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes 6-0. Congratulations, John.
We need a couple more things here, Mr. Chair, so I'll move those forward. Jay Pimpari will make a motion to issue a variance for the project at 88 Beach Street.
Second.
We'll vote on that, on the issuance of the variance for 88 Beach Street to work in the buffer zone. Kathy Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, yay.
Eric Eisenhower, yay. Trish Grady?
Trish Grady, yay.
Chris McFarland?
Chris McFarland, yay.
Jay Pimpare?
Jay Pimpare, yay.
Marianne Weatherald?
Yay.
Yay. 6-0 in favor. Okay. Jay, you mentioned you had another one to make?
I think there's still a stormwater permit here. So Jay Pimpari would make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for the project at 88 Beach Street.
Okay. Anybody second?
Second.
Okay, we vote on that. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, yay.
Eric Eisenhower, yay. Trish Grady.
Trish Grady, yay.
Chris McFarland.
Chris McFarland, yay.
Jay Pimpare.
Jay Pimpari, yay.
Marianne Weatherald.
Marianne Weatherald, yay.
Okay, that passes 6-0. Great.
Thank you very much.
Hey, John, before you leave, if this is okay, I should have mentioned this when we were talking on the previous project. The while the most of the plant species seem appropriate, some of them are not available.
Okay.
Like it's unless they're talking like really small pitch pine, you can't buy pitch pine of any size. So I'm just kind of putting that out as a warning to your landscape architect that I'll
have them go through the list and make sure that everything is available.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy New Year, everybody.
Good night.
See you Tuesday.
Okay. Okay. Next on our list. It's 62 Whitehead Road, and I will read it into the minutes. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, January 7th, 2021, at 6:30 via remote participation on a Zoom platform for applicants Brian Dougherty and Nick Robert for a notice of intent 2001 to expand a driveway parking area, reconstruct retaining walls, grading and landscaping at 62 Whitehead Road. All right.
Eric, I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing.
Okay. Thank you. So we're down to 5. Who do we have? Anybody here to represent the applicants?
Yes, thank you, Eric. Jeff Hassett here.
Okay. Good evening, Jeff.
So I'm here on behalf of the property owners, Brian Doherty and Nick Robert. And this is an NOI to modify a driveway, reconstruct a walkway, reconstruct a deck, and some landscape improvements. The property is just under 4 acres in size. The home on the property was built in 1928. And you may be familiar with this property. We did permit a garage and a driveway, which was just built a couple of years ago. So this garage addition in the driveway that comes up to it, which we filed for the certificate of compliance a couple of years ago.
Jeff Hassett, would you mind just blowing that up a little bit, please, as you describe that? Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Sure. So this garage, and then their primary driveway, their historic driveway, comes in here, and previously they parked down at the bottom of the hill and had to walk up to the house. So for the previous owner, they built this garage and a driveway up to it. So the wetlands on the property, they include BVWs, which are shown in blue, the 50-foot buffers in red, and the 100-foot buffers in green. There is floodplain on the property, although all the work is outside of it. Because there's floodplain, there's technically a coastal bank, although it doesn't function as one because this is not a waterfront property. It's set back from the water. There are houses in between this house and the ocean or the harbor. So I'm going to run through the work. This I kind of already started to touch on, but the purpose of reconfiguring this driveway is to get 2 additional parking spaces right here. So they would construct a wall here, it'd be a concrete wall with a stone facade, adding a little bit of parking. And as part of that project, currently there's a wall that basically follows the 50-foot buffer coming all the way up here and tying into the house. And there's a porch here and also a patio. They're going to remove that patio, remove this porch, and then reconstruct this portion of the wall which brings it just outside of the 50-foot buffer, where currently it's in the 50-foot buffer. This driveway exists. They're just proposing to plant trees and bushes along the edges of it. So the next part of the project is this portion of the house here. Is currently a deck and a retaining wall with a patio inside of it with steps going down. That is proposed to be reconstructed. So remove that wall, construct a new wall here, the more bold one, and new steps down to the lower level. And then on this side of the house, the deck goes pretty substantially into the 50-foot buffer currently, this corner here. When they reconstruct it, they're going to square it off like that. So it's, other than a sliver here, it's outside of the 50-foot buffer. And then the other part of the project is this area in here is currently lawn with a few mature trees, and they're proposing to regrade that and landscape it. So the majority of that lawn will now be mulched and planted with trees and shrubs. So basically they end up with a lower lawn area here, sloping up to kind of a walkway through this area and another mulched area around the house. I'll note that I am showing, this is the erosion barrier, and I am showing it in the 50-foot buffer, partially there. The only reason I'm doing that is there isn't any grading proposed, but they are proposing to convert that lawn area into a planted area. So I would want the barrier around it. The only trees to be removed are 3 small trees along the house. Otherwise, all the trees remain, and they're proposing quite a few trees, 31 trees and 103 shrubs, all of which will be native and approved, part of your approved list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeff, the open area on the bottom, the circular area,
yep.
There are 6 or 7 fairly recently cut stumps there of large trees. When were the trees cut down?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
It was well forested.
I don't know when they were removed.
Yeah, Eric, I spoke with one of the neighbors or somebody that lives around there, and she was speculating that they did some work, I don't know how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where they redid that lawn, and when they put the loam down, she was speculating that it was too deep and killed a lot of those trees that are in there. Because yeah, there's like 7 stumps.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't look healthy; they were hollow. But some other ones, you couldn't really tell that they were, not doing well just from the stumps. But that's the only information I was able to get on those.
Okay. What do you think of the project, Jeff?
Well, I think, as far as replacing those 7 trees that they cut down, I think, what they're proposing is sufficient. At the top of the, Jeff, can you scroll down just a little bit so we can see the top where the driveway is again?
Yep.
So all this work that they're proposing with the, the additional driveway is pretty much an existing driveway, except for this bump out where they're going to put that wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the left-hand side there. Where that wall is going to go over is two existing large stone walls and a landscaped area. So that's really the only impervious area that you're losing, is just that corner where they're going to extend that wall out. All the other work is basically in an existing disturbed area, either lawn or on top of driveway.
And Jeff Hassett, there's no 50-foot buffer zone for the ocean wall, or the what do you call it, bank?
Well, in this case, you technically have a top of coastal bank for any property that is FEMA floodplain that would be connected to the ocean in any way.
Yeah.
But in this case, it really doesn't function as one because it's so far removed from the ocean. You're not seeing any wave action here. So this is how we've treated it on this project, on the previous filings, as well as other similar ones, where we just show the 50-foot buffer to the BVW itself.
Yeah, I think like
The
this
wetland delineation, is that working off of the previous wetland delineation from the project that was in front of us a few years ago? I'm very familiar with this project here, being on the commission a few years back.
It was. The previous delineation ended here at flag B1, because actually maybe it was more like in here, but we had Brad Holmes extend the wetland line through this area where we are now proposing mark. So it's the same delineation, but it was extended.
Okay, when you say so it's the same delineation, working off the delineation from a couple years ago, correct?
Yes. So basically, a couple years ago, we did not have this area delineated. So I asked Brad to go out and delineate this area, and then to confirm that there weren't any changes to the wetland line throughout the rest of the property.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I've also been out to the property and have noticed the stumps in front of the house. It's good to see that there are 31 trees going in there. However, like with comments to most projects, I don't see any sizes on the particular trees, the plant species, etc. So I would like to see that revised to reflect that. And given that, regardless of why the trees were cut down, clearly they were cut down, whether they were dead, whether they were hollow, we will probably never know that unless we had an arborist report or somebody out there pre-cutting that down. So that's debatable. But so I would make a comment to emphasize on the larger size of the trees, to replace those trees that were upwards of 18 inches, 2 feet in diameter in the front there. So that's my comment there.
Yeah, so we specify 3 to 4 inch caliper. We could certainly increase that. Maybe say 7 of them could be a larger size.
Let's do that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe.
Where is that outline, Jeff? Is that on the plan? I didn't.
Yeah,
see
it's above the title block in the tree legend here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Jeff, I'll back up at the driveway.
So that's the. I'm sorry. Okay. All right.
Back up at the driveway where you plan to extend it. I'm also very familiar with this property, having seen it before the conservation, but having looked at it in purchase. So I know a lot about it. Isn't that ledge where you're extending the driveway? Like, will you have to remove how much ledge? I think that's ledge up there that you're cutting into.
No, this is actually, this is not ledge. There are 2 boulder walls, one here and one here, and it's landscaped in between.
Mm-hmm. So when you
there is a photograph of that, Jeff. There's a photograph of that whole section, if it's any help.
Yeah, it's on OneDrive. Marianne, do you want to see the photo of that corner?
Yes.
Okay, hold on one second here. Jeff has it. Okay.
All yours.
Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 minute here while I find it. Sorry, I didn't have it ready.
So Jeff Hassett, again, being familiar with the project, the area down below of the driveway, which I guess is in the back of the house there, the stone area, that is correct. That is to remain the same. There's no work to be done down in that area. It's going to remain as stone.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, in the foreground in this photo.
Yeah, you can just see that there. Yep. Okay.
So this area right here is where they're extending the wall out.
Yeah.
Into this landscaped area.
So will it match with the garage, or what?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to match that facade on the garage foundation.
So then you're going to bring in fill.
Yes.
That area as well. Yep. Okay. How much fill will you be bringing in?
20 by 20 by say 8, 7. 120 cubic yards, plus or minus.
So about how many truckloads is that?
Oh, 4 trucks. Oh, 120? Depends on how big the truck is.
It's more than that.
Yeah, probably 12 trucks if it's a 10-yard truck.
They make it up that driveway? That's a very narrow driveway. Will you have to come around?
That might be their problem, not ours.
Actually, no, and I think I've overestimated on that 122 because
Yeah, it can't be that big.
yeah, because that's only about half of that footprint needs that depth. So I bet it's more like 60 or 70. But yeah, they are comfortable that they can make that maneuver and use that parking area. They've reviewed that extensively with the architect, the landscape architect, and myself.
Excuse me.
Jeff, is there any work here in the buffer zone?
No.
Need a variance? Jeff Summers.
No. I mean, so the only thing is just putting the silt sock in the buffer zone. So that there's no permanent alterations.
So we don't need a variance?
No.
Okay.
Jeff Hassett, what's the rationale for the moving the existing wall, the existing porch, the existing deck, etc.? I mean, this is not that old of a house here, and proposing new stone walkway and steps and new retaining wall. What's the rationale for all that?
Sure, and I wanted to go back to that because the existing wall right here is within the 50-foot buffer.
Right.
As is a porch, we're asking to remove those structures, but then the new driveway and wall will be outside of it. The new owners feel that area is difficult to maneuver, difficult to park in, and they're trying to make it more efficient and kind of more their style. And they'd rather they don't use that porch. They'd like to get rid of it.
So what's going to be in place of that on that embankment there? It's flat area, correct?
It is, yes.
So is that going to be grass, rock, boulder?
Landscaped, I would imagine, stabilized.
That's not going to be extended driveway as well?
No, because there'll be a wall right here. So it's going to be kind of that somewhat useless area beyond the wall. There's really no access to it. Easy access, without climbing over the wall or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then how about on the other side, Jeff, with the proposed new stone walkway and steps with the new retaining wall?
Yep.
What's the rationale for that?
They're just in disrepair.
Is that new or is that old?
That's old.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the left?
Well, when they built the garage, they would have put this deck in here, but the wall and the steps they're old.
Yeah. Right, that's always been existing there.
Yeah.
So it seems also down below at the bottom of this rendering, you putting in stone steps. That's all new too. So is that for your stabilizing the bank?
Over here, these steps.
Oh, that's all new.
Yeah. Right. So it slopes off. They want to get a usable area down here where their child can play and whatnot, and then they want to convert the rest of it more to a landscaped area. So there'd be a grassed walkway coming across this way and then so basically to get up to the house now you'd have a flat area here and then steps up to a more level area here and then another flight of steps up to the house. So trying to make it a way that's more accessible,
Does it say that the elevation right now is at 24 and you're going to level it down to 13 and 14? Is that what it says to the left? I mean, to the right, under exist lawn.
No, the grading's not that substantial. So you see here we have a existing 15 contour that's being lowered to 14.
You're taking it down a foot.
Yeah, the grading it really is not that substantial.
So Jeff, as you've described here, you've got steps going up to a somewhat level area and then not really level, there's still some contours there, and then going up to another set of steps to go into the house that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I think there was our chair had asked the question whether or not there was work done in the 50. The answer was no, but looking at the plan here, there is work done being proposed in the 50, and that's the portion of the existing lawn within the 50 to be mulched and planted.
Right. No grading in that area, but it will be converted to a planted area.
No grading, it's going to be mulch and plantings. And can you just talk a little bit more about those plantings, about what they are or what they would be?
So they would be, there'll be bushes, and the landscape architect has not picked the species of those at this point. But they will be native. I
think I'd just be a little bit more comfortable in seeing a little bit more spelled out in the form of a planting plan for this project. I know there's a lot of work done here, and I applaud you for the 31 trees and the size of the trees. But I'd personally like to see a little bit more detail as far as if you have a landscape architect, you know, at the ready, which seems like it is, or could put together some type of a plan that would really be helpful here.
Okay, yeah, we can put that together pretty quickly.
If you could color code it, that would be great. One other, sorry, just one other, Tricia. Say here, I think you're marking that there is a large tree which has now been removed. I think that's where the big one of the stumps are. So I think the plan has to be updated to reflect that tree.
Marianne, where are you
there?
Marianne?
In the lower lawn, and where it says exist lawn, it has the marking of where a large tree is. That's not existing. Everything has been removed.
Oh, you mean on the right-hand side?
Yes, on the right to the right of the 50.
Yeah.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll double check if it's been removed.
There are no trees anymore.
Okay.
It shows in the photos.
At one time, it was a very wooded lot, and then it was reduced down, just maybe.
Jeff Hassett, could you put the photo up of the bays, please?
Yeah, I think I have the photos.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I think that tree is there, though. So it doesn't quite go all the way over, but.
Yeah, there's a tree on the right there. There's a large tree. Is that the one we're referring to?
Yeah, that's the tree that I show.
Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah, along with 8 other stumps.
It looks like it's more moved over to the left on the rendering.
That's okay.
I may be mistaken.
And Jeff, the only other question I had was when the removal of the deck to take it out of the 50-foot buffer zone, you said you were going to stabilize that area, the area that's in the 50-foot buffer zone. Would that be part of the planting plan, or will you include what your plans are to do with that?
Yeah, I can add that information. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Anything else, everybody? Are we all set? Jay, do we have to put in a variance for the plantings in the 50 with the mulch?
Well, I mean, personally, I'm only one vote here, but I don't feel comfortable with taking a decision on this project tonight. I personally would like to see a landscaping plan. We're not talking about just talking about specific species or 1 or 2 trees here. I personally would feel a little bit more comfortable with continuing the hearing and seeing a little bit more detail with respect to the planting on this project. That's just me.
Well, it's not a timely project. There's no work can be done for 2 or 3 months on this, so we might as well take the time to get it right. All right?
Okay.
So, Jeff, it's back to you to amplify on the landscaping plan and the areas that we talked about.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll work with the landscape architect on that before the next meeting.
Yeah. Who is the architect, you know?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
It's someone that I haven't worked with in the past.
All right.
But 2.5 weeks ago when we filed this, I did not have a plant list. I would imagine at this point they do have it. So.
Okay. Ooh, okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. Are you here for the next one?
So we'll continue this to January 21st?
Until the 21st, yes. And if Jeff, you want to continue it longer? Or is the 21st satisfactory?
No, I think the 21st will work, please.
Okay. All right. Next and last project. I'll read it into the minute. It's K&E Construction. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 6:30 by remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicant K&E Development for notice of intent 21-02 and stormwater permit 20-01 to construct a single-family home dwelling within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland at 102 Howe Road. I think we need an expanded view on that, Jeff, if you could. You want to give us your views on this, Jeff?
Sure, thank you. Again, for the record, Jeff Assett. The applicant for this project is K&E Construction. They have the project under agreement to purchase to build a house for a client of theirs, contingent on permits. It's currently owned by Wayne and Sandra Schmidt. And it's a vacant property. It's 5.5 acres in size. It has frontage on Howe Road. So Howe Road is here. And it's undeveloped with the exception of an existing gravel driveway, which I'll zoom in on it, but there's a gravel driveway that runs here. And then it runs, the way continues to the back of the property. But the gravel driveway itself turns and goes to this property here, which is 726 Jerusalem Road Drive. And there are sewer and there are water services within that driveway. So zooming in on it.
Jeff Summers, your comments, please.
You're muted, Jeff.
Oh, you're muted, Jeff. There you go.
I don't think we were done with the presentation first, though.
No, we're not.
No.
No, I'll elaborate on this. So
I hope not.
You stopped, Jeff.
Was that enough?
You're back.
No, so this is the existing gravel driveway coming off here. So the proposed work would be to bring a proposed driveway off of that. And we are seeking a waiver for only this small portion of the driveway right here. It's about 33 square feet where the proposed driveway connects to the existing driveway. And you have wetlands and the 50-foot buffer here. So it's again, that corner. Beyond that, it's a paved driveway with water and sewer services up to a proposed house. There are utility poles with overhead wires within this way. So we're pulling off an overhead electric service from the pole here directly into the house. This work area is only about 19,500 square feet in size. So it leaves 5 acres of the property undeveloped. And that's about 91% of the property. In this area, there are, I believe, these 8 trees are the only mature trees that need to be removed. In the work area, there's also 4 mature trees here in this area that will remain. For stormwater, roof runoff will go to a roof drywall system located here. So that's down gradient of the house, so all the downspouts can be directed to it. And then all of the runoff from the driveway will be captured in a rain garden in this location here. So we are reducing the rates and volumes of the runoff where they then overflow to this vast wetland resource area. There's no flow onto Howe Road itself. There's an erosion control barrier marking the limit of work that will be staked out by the surveyors, being this bold dashed line. And again, that's about 19,500 square feet. Thank you.
Jeff, what was this road? Was this a road or a driveway originally?
Driveway.
This has always been someone's driveway, and then it becomes what you want it to be, an extension, a driveway.
Yeah. It is a second driveway to the house on Jerusalem Road, but the way that that it's located in has been in existence before the lots on Howe Road were ever created, when it was all one piece of land a long, long time ago.
You're saying it was a driveway to the house, which is in the upper portion of the diagram you have there.
Exactly.
Up the hill.
Exactly. And then this way that it's located in, this way actually continues to the back of this property, way, way beyond. And that's what I was saying has been in existence since Howe Road was ever even created.
Jeff, who noted the trees that are on the plot? Who did that?
Our surveyors located them when they surveyed it.
Because I was out there and I counted at least twice as many trees of good size than you have there. So my first question is, I'd like someone, maybe a third party, to go back and to redo the inventory in terms of the size of where they are and the species of the trees, all right?
Okay, I can double check that myself.
Yeah, because, you know, when I walked it and I looked at your diagram, I found the trees to be in a much more cumbersome position in terms of pursuit of the project than you have on your diagram, all right?
Okay, is there a minimum size that you want to see?
Yeah, I would like to see a diagram with anything above 6 inches noted in terms of its position and the type of tree, please.
Okay. On other projects, we have in wooded areas located trees that are 12-inch plus.
There are a hell of a lot of trees here, Jeff, all right? Are you saying that if it's 6 inches, you feel free to cut it down?
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. The area within the limit of work, you know, the driveway and the house, anywhere where there's grading and construction, the trees would need to be removed. But typically our surveyors locate trees that are 12-inch diameter plus.
Yeah.
So if you want 6, we can do that, but it's not. It's just that's why we didn't do it before.
Could you outline the buffer zone lines for us before we finish our discussion of trees, please?
Yeah.
Where is the 50 and where is the 100?
So the wetland is blue, the 50-foot buffer is in red, and the 100-foot buffer is in green.
Yeah.
So just to clarify here, that may help. The trees that we're talking about, there's a significant amount of trees that are outlined between the wetland area and the 50-foot buffer zone. To be clear, there's no proposal of any work to be done in the 50-foot buffer other than the little area of driveway which you talked about, Jeff, the 33 square feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. There's no work proposed beyond this dashed bold line that goes around.
Right. Outside of that bottle, it looks like a bottle shape here.
Sure.
That there's no work or no removal of trees, etc. So I think to your point, Eric, it would be great if your comment is to talk about the work or any removal of trees within the bottle, then I guess we should focus in on that.
I would comment that I'd like to know a year from now, when this project's underway, the trees that are in the 100-foot buffer zone that are no longer possibly there, like we have on other projects, Jay. You know, a year from now, if we vote this project to go ahead, there are a hell of a lot of trees there I don't think will be there, and there'll be no recourse at that point because we didn't notice where they are. And I am absolutely certain there are more trees there than what we see. And it makes no sense to me that someone would want to develop this without taking out a substantial quantity of the trees within the 100-foot buffer zone, Jay, that are not shown, they're not indicated as being desired to be cut down. So
you're talking about between the, well, you say within the 50, but within the wetland.
I'm looking at the green line.
Yeah.
The bottom of it.
Okay.
What line is that? The 100-foot, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Anything going up from that is a tree I'd like to have marked, all right? Or trees that are on their property at least, because it is a jungle of trees. Jeff, can you get some photographs out, please, of standing down here in the the junction of the driveway looking up toward the area of the house so people who haven't visited can see the quantity of trees there, please?
Sure. So I just want to make a comment too. So the in the stormwater rules and regulations, as part of location and description of natural features, it says existing vegetation of various kinds, including tree lines, shrub layer, ground cover, and herbaceous vegetation, and trees with a caliper of 12 inches or larger, noting specimen trees and forest communities. So I think, you know, the reason for not marking every single tree is just what you said. It is a forest out there, and to mark every single tree would be quite a task. I think it may be easier, you know, if on the site plan it shows, you know, the tree line and where we know nothing further is going to be removed, and just assume that everything outside of that tree line is going to be removed. I mean, if you want to, you know, ask him to count how many trees there are, but I think, you know, to place every single tree on the site plan is asking for quite a lot.
Could you put the photograph up, please?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Yeah. While I have this open there, that bold line that I've mentioned a couple times now, it is called out as proposed limit of work and erosion control barrier. So that is the limit of work. And that would be the first step in this project, would be to stake that out and then install that 12-inch diameter barrier. So it will be clearly defined. And then following completion of the project, we have to submit an as-built plan. So that would not be in compliance with their approval if there's any work beyond that.
Jeff, it looks like there's going to be a substantial amount of excavation to take place here. You're going to remove rock from the top, and you're going to create new contours downhill. Do you have an estimate for how much rock breaking you're going to do?
Yeah, I estimate it to be about 200 yards of rock coming out for the construction of the foundation.
We talking about more blasting?
Yes.
How long is it going to take, you think?
You know, I haven't spoken to the client or their blasting contractor about that, so I could get back to you on that.
Jeff, can you explain to us what 200 yards of rock might be? Like is that how many feet of rock, or truckloads? Can you break it down for us?
Yep, so I calculated that there's an area that's about 800 square feet, where on average there's about 7 feet of rock to be removed. And that's where I come up with the 200 yards. And 200.
So Jeff, I know you guys are working just a couple of houses away, a lot or two away, and we can see how much rock's been moved around out there, how much blasting and stuff. Is this going to be comparable to the current project you're working on?
No, this is far less substantial.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So this view here, you know, when you take these pictures in the woods, it's hard to kind of remember where it was, but this view is looking down from like where the corner of the house would be, and this area right in here is the bend in the driveway. And I think this is kind of standing in the bend in the driveway, looking up towards where the house would be up in this area.
If you look where the conifer is, Jeff, that's roughly where the house is going to be.
Yeah.
Up there.
So how long is the driveway again? Can you remind me?
Yep.
Maybe start it from that corner of the 33 square feet that's in the 50-foot buffer zone.
About 170 feet long from that point.
Jeff, what is the measured width of the dirt track? Because it's not a gravel path; it's a dirt track right now.
Yeah, it's about 10 feet.
How many large trucks you imagine you have to get up to the top of that hill we just saw in order to complete this project?
There will be a number of trucks, and as far as a number, I couldn't tell you.
50 trips?
Sure.
Full of materials, bricks, wood, the whole bit like that. I mean, there's a lot of I think a lot of driving is going to be taking place on your dirt track. It's in the buffer zone, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so those, I mean, if that driveway begins to rut, they would need to repair it.
Jeff, I've been out there many times. I was actually out there today. I drove down in there just for shits and giggles. I don't recommend anybody driving down in there unless you have 4-wheel drive. Looking at the project on paper, you say there's no work done, no work to be proposed in the 50. It's easy to say that, but that road it's a gravel driveway. Yeah, if you want to call it a driveway, it did service the old house. I just have a very hard time grasping the fact that there's not going to be a need for a significant improvement to that road. Switching gears a little bit, I went out to Spring Street today. I strongly discourage anyone from doing anything other than walking down into the house in the back of Spring Street. If you remember, that was when the project's actually never been approved by this commission, but the proposal was that there would be no work done on the driveway itself. Go down in there now. There's probably about 6 inches of fresh gravel that has been laid down in there, that there are ruts from tires, etc. There's no way in a million years a concrete truck would ever be able to get down into that Spring Street site without having asphalt or concrete as far as the driveway. So, this project on paper is, doesn't require so much as a variance other than the little edge of the driveway. But, in reality, I have a hard time grasping the fact that there's not going to be a need for significant work done to that driveway. But
how wide would you estimate the excavators are that are doing the work up the hill? And what do you think they weigh? Those are pretty big machines, aren't they?
10, 20 tons.
They're using 2 of them or 3 of them up there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. It also goes to the point about safety. And there's no way that a fire truck would ever be able to get down in there. An ambulance would never be able to get down in there. Police, yeah, we have nice 4-wheel drive vehicles, could probably get down in there. That's the reality of it. So it's easy to say that there's going to be no work done to the gravel driveway. I would strongly encourage a site visit for the commission to see it amongst themselves, but it's more of a safety concern. And again, the house itself, and we haven't gotten into the stormwater, the house, this is one of these projects where the house itself is set out of the 50. And again, I don't know, it's a difficult one to grasp in reality.
My feeling is, Jeff, in the end, if we go ahead, you're going to have to take out a lot of the trees that are lining left and right of the dirt path that are going in there. Are you going to have to widen whatever you're going to have there, whether it be gravel you're going to have to bring in? It's going to be much wider. The trees are going to go down in order to make the corners. And it's not going to be a very civilized construction project. And I'm not an engineer. I just look at it, all right? I see a hell of a lot of trees getting in your way. A lot of trees in an area where you need freedom of movement. When you get the big trucks backing up and all of that. I just can't imagine it taking place with the amount of trees that are going to stay there, because you're not cutting down any trees whatsoever, except the ones right where the house is being built. But you have access problems all along that road, or excuse me, not road, dirt track, because it's not a gravel path now. It's a dirt track.
It's an old carriage road that's even on the map, it's shown on the map in the back of a narrative history of Cohasset, the first volume. So it's been there a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess my comment, I'd like to see some form of a operation and maintenance plan for the gravel driveway. As far as, what that would be during the construction phase and or immediately after the construction phase.
Tell me, Jeff,
yes.
Who owns the gravel driveway? Is it owned by the various sections of the property that it crosses? Is there an easement? Is it common ownership? How does that work out?
I think it's owned, maybe Jeff Hassett can confirm this, but I think it's owned by the property. I think that's where they get their 50-foot road frontage from.
Okay.
So this property actually has frontage on Howe Road. That's where they get their frontage. But this way is, it would be owned by, this section would be owned by the subject property, which it passes over. There may be, because it then continues, beyond where this work is proposed out to the rear, there may be others who have rights to it.
Jeff Hassett, could you share your screen there a little bit, please?
Yep.
So is it residence A and, residence B and residence C that this lot encompasses?
Correct, yep.
So it's resident B and C there, that's the one lot, okay?
Yeah. Okay, so.
Sorry, Jay, could you explain what you're analyzing again?
So I was just referring to the beginning of Howe Road where it comes in. That appears to be residence B, and then the back area seems to be residence C labeled on the plan. But that's all encompassing this project under one ownership.
Yeah, that's right. So it has frontage on Howe Road here at the bottom right corner, and then this way continues beyond to the rear. So this portion will be owned by the subject property, but there may be others beyond who have rights to it. And then as far as the zoning district, this property is in 2 districts. Like the front portion is in Residence B, and the rear, where the house is located, is in the C district.
Is there, acting in good faith here, is there any proposal to add any more projects or homes onto this existing gravel driveway?
No, there isn't.
This is an interesting property line. The choke point there is about 42 feet wide, but as you can see, it flares out onto Howe Road. It does look like it's been surveyed. It is part of the tax parcel. I just, I'm not sure what I wonder about here, but really the narrowest part of the lot there is only 42 feet. So I wonder whether there actually is 50 feet of frontage on Howe Road. You can see it's,
that's something that
it's like a funnel there from right to left.
Yeah.
And the narrowest part of that's only 42 feet, I believe.
Yeah.
Wide in the beginning of the road, and then it narrows out. So
it does have about 80 feet of frontage on Howe Road because it gets wider.
B to maintain this road, will they be responsible for it as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is resident B also responsible to maintain this road or to maintain this driveway in addition to resident C?
That's only a zoning district line. So Cohasset has 3 different zoning districts, and depending on which one you're in, they're varying minimum lot area requirements, property line setbacks.
But I believe residents B and C are the same owner.
Garrett.
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
They're the same owner.
Okay.
Jeff, as you look at this, when you bring gravel in, and you want to dump your gravel in the 50-foot zone, you put it at the crossroads, or are you going to have to do it down 2/3 of the length of the driveway that's in the 50-foot buffer zone? How do you see that happening?
Like when deliveries are made of material?
No, it's your project. I mean, we have prohibition on bringing material into the 50-foot buffer zone, so you're going to have to deal with it, or we are. And you talked about that crossroads, having a problem with the 50-foot. But if you look at the length of the driveway, you're going to have, someone's going to have a problem all the way along the length of that dirt trap trying to bring in material.
Yeah.
Not just that one area. Because you're not going to get your big trucks in on this mud path.
Can I just make a comment concerning the driveway?
Yes.
Oh.
So in the Wetlands Protection Act, there's certain certain activities which are considered minor activities and aren't subject to regulation. And one of those concerns driveways. So it says the repair, so this is an exempt activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. The repair or replacement of an existing and lawfully located driveway servicing not more than 2 dwelling units, provided that all work remains within the existing limits of the driveway and all surfaces are permanently stabilized within 14 days of final grade. So
that's exempt, Jeff.
Yeah, so maybe Heather can help me out with this, but from a legal standpoint, I would, interpret that as, if a property owner wants to destroy their driveway by bringing in 50 cement trucks, that they have the right to do so and that they can repair that.
Same way for Spring Street, right? I guess.
Well, that was my point that I was alluding to earlier. On paper, this might comply with the bylaws and the state standards. However, in reality, what is the definition of repair? And repair could potentially be, repair would be after the first time a heavy truck drove down the road. There would need to be another truck behind it repairing that work. So that's the reality of a project like this. I did know, I've seen, and I think Jeff Summers, you might have been out there with me. We've walked down in there to look at the project in the back because there was, we actually issued an enforcement order for the project with at the top of the driveway there for the removal of trees in the 50. And so we've walked back down in there. But probably in the past year or so, they've replaced the water line, if you remember that, Jeff.
Yeah.
And so they actually did a pretty good job of replacing the water line, but now the water line's only down, 2 or 3 feet, and the trench they dug was only probably 2 feet wide, if it was even that wide. So that was done very effectively and done very well. And you'd never even know that work was done there if you walk down in there today. Looking at the plan here, Jeff Hassett, is there, so there's water and the electrical is overhead, but the water and sewer is going to need to be tied in. Is it tied into the existing line there, or is it going to be a whole new stub for water and sewer underneath that existing driveway as is now?
They're able to tie into the existing water and sewer lines.
So the water and sewer goes all the way, that water and sewer services the house in the back?
Correct.
And you're going to be able to tie into that existing line at the end of the driveway?
Correct.
So again, the existing gravel driveway to remain is just that. There's no water, no sewer, no excavation, not even outlined on the plan, but most very likely going to need to be some repairs to the gravel driveway.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And the applicant is well aware, I've discussed it with them myself, that we're not proposing to improve that existing driveway at all. Of course, they would have to repair it, which is within their rights, but they're not allowed to improve it
under
without a filing to do so.
Yeah, and keeping it as a pervious surface as well.
Right.
Right now, that driveway is shown as about 10 feet wide. Again, I get back to the size of the equipment that's necessary to do the excavation that's being proposed. That's going to tear that 10 feet up and then some, I suspect. Probably go out there and put a tape across from track to track on the equipment that's being used, but I just really can't see how those big excavators are going to get down this 10-foot driveway and get back out without not just tearing up the 10 feet, which would be, as Jeff Summers pointed out, something that's exempt. I suspect that they're going to need 15 feet anyway to be able to get in and out of there, and the same with the dump trucks. And I think it's unrealistic to think that a 10-foot driveway is going to service.
And they have the fire engines.
Huge machines. Yeah, fire engines too.
So this will be tight. There's no doubt about that. But a typical travel lane on a pretty major road is 12 feet wide. And there are a lot of roads in town where the travel lanes are 10 feet wide. So it will be tight, but.
That people are driving excavators on?
Trailering them.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not going to be driving the excavators up this one either, though. They'll bring it in on a trailer to the site itself. So, you know, I know totally understanding that there is a concern about, you know, wear and tear, but it will be going in on a trailer. It's not gonna, they're not gonna drop the, you know, excavator on Howe Road and climb up from there.
That's what they did.
They might.
Two doors away.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, probably the excavator would cause less damage given the amount of footprint it has, considering, you know, instead of like an 18-wheeler backing in there to drop it off. I think they would drop it off on Howe Road and drive it back. I think that would do less damage.
I'm not exactly. There's no way that excavator is going to be dropped on Howe Road. It's going to drive itself in there. An excavator is designed specifically for that. I'm not so much worried about the excavator as I am an actual concrete truck, which is a two-wheel drive vehicle. So these are some of the concerns that I would have. And I'm just pointing out the obvious. I will say that this is certainly it is a gravel drive. It does service.
While you say that, Jay, I think Tom said that in fact it's historically a carriage trail. At what point does it become a gravel drive?
Well, I say that it's a gravel drive, and I have no legal background on this at all as far as what it was and what it wasn't. If you go back there, there's actually a garage that this gravel drive ties into for the house that looks like it's, I don't know, I'm north on the plan, but probably not north. Yeah, up around there. Yeah. You go all the way up there. There's a one, if not two bay garage that is only accessible by this road. And it's not used on a daily basis. That home is serviced by a paved driveway coming in from Jerusalem Road, but it is it's certainly easy to say that a car could get down in there and go down that road. I've seen some projects in the past where someone has stated that it's a gravel driveway and is merely a path through the woods. This is not a path through the woods. I will give it that. It is certainly, it's a gravel drive. If you wanted to drive down in there, you could drive down in there. I can't say that other projects are like that. And could you drive in there tomorrow? Yeah, you could drive in there tomorrow. Could a concrete truck drive in there tomorrow? I would highly recommend not doing that.
Yeah, JD, I was down there with my pickup truck and went all the way. Went a long ways down. The problem wasn't so much the traction, because it's four-wheel drive. There wasn't much gravel at all, by the way. It's mostly soil. The problem is trying to get around the trees on the side that are leaning over. You don't have, in a lot of places, you don't have 10 feet. You certainly don't have 12 feet, because you'd have to take a lot of timber down in order to get your regular 10-foot width the whole way down there. I don't know how we deal with that. I don't think it's a viable project, but, you know, that's just one, you know, that's just one person's opinion.
I think there would probably need to be some pruning that would be done. No doubt there would need to be some. What's that?
More than pruning, chainsaw.
Yeah, call it pruning. You know, again, I believe this commission we've certainly allowed pruning. Whether or not, you know, pruning does certainly not meet the definition.
Do we have the authority, Jay, to allow a great deal of pruning in the 50-foot buffer zone with chainsaws? Is that in the bylaws? If it is, show me where it is.
Actually, there is, I don't have it here in front of me, but we do allow vista pruning.
This isn't vista pruning. Vista pruning,
I get that.
There's no view of the harbor.
The definition of pruning versus the definition of a great deal of pruning with a chainsaw are a little different.
I'm going to bed in a few minutes, guys, and this is going to give me a headache, I guarantee you.
Well, I would recommend a site visit. That would be my next
site visit is fine. Jeff,
So
Jeff Summers.
So I'll throw out the question. At what point is pruning branches back that are growing over your existing driveway? At what point is that not maintenance of an existing driveway?
Yeah.
At what point is pruning back the stump of a tree no longer vista pruning? I'll answer that one, Jeff Hassett, because that's what you're going to have to do here. You can put the photographs back up. You'll see there's a hell of a lot of wood leaning over the driveway. And I dodged it all in my pickup. But, you know, a cement truck doesn't have that alacrity.
So this might maybe an area where it'd be necessary to locate all of those trees of any caliber along either side of the driveway to see which ones need to be removed.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think, you know, from what Jeff Hassett just said, you know, if you want to use your driveway and drive a certain vehicle down it and you can't, then, you know, it would seem to me that then that, you know, if you have, whether it's a tree trunk or whether it's a branch, if there's something preventing you from driving a vehicle down there, then it would be maintaining your driveway. I kind of agree with that perspective.
As long as you're not widening it beyond that 10-foot
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
gentlemen,
10 feet wide, you can go up.
Gentlemen, we are here to defend the wetlands. Our job is to protect the wetlands in Cohasset, not to find slinky ways of getting down dirt tracks that tear up the wetlands and do things because some engineering company feels it wants to put a damn house up. Remember what our responsibility is, all right? And the more you try and weasel your way around to get the cement trucks down there, the more we're not living up to our responsibility to defend the wetlands in Cohasset, period, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's certain property rights too that we have to respect also. You know, we can't just say, oh, you can't do that because
I don't worry about the property development people, Jeff. They got big lawyers, all right? We're here trying to struggle to keep these places from getting overrun by development. That's your job too, Jeff. You're the conservation agent. You're not working for a property company. Come on.
It's not my job to prevent development. It's to make sure that the development is done according to the rules and regulations that allow it to happen.
That's the way you define it.
You know, we're talking about a gravel way, driveway within a way that's been in existence. I can get you a date on it, but it's back to, say, 1900.
So in any event, we were talking about a site visit. When do we want to do this?
Let's do it.
We do a site visit. Can you mark it out, Jeff, the Hassett, the property lines and the site better? I did go down there. I didn't drive my car all the way through it because it seemed like a lot of brush and logs across the road.
I think, Jeff, if we're going to do it, we're going to need to know where the 50-foot line is. All right? Yep. At a minimum.
Okay. Yeah, so right now we have the house staked out. In addition, we'll stake out the limit of work, and we'll give the 50-foot buffer through that area as well.
I had difficulty finding where the house, I guess, was marked. I saw some markers, like some ties to trees, but it was difficult for me to see all that.
Yeah, without a plan showing you exactly where the points are, it would be difficult. But I'll be on the sidewalk. I'll be able to.
There's too many trees in the ground to see where the markers are, Marianne. That's why.
Oh, I needed something to help me through the brush as I was starting to fall. I can do a site visit at the end of the week or the following week after.
I would suggest the following week so we can get it surveyed.
I prefer next week.
Oh, I can't do that.
I think we have to find out when the survey is going to be completed by, and then we work off of that date. So, yes. Jeff Hassett, what would be the suitable time frame for you in order to schedule something like this?
Could we schedule it for maybe Thursday or Friday of next week?
When you say next week, the coming week?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't make it. No.
Is that the 21st or 22nd you're expecting?
I was actually suggesting, say, the 14th or the 15th, but why don't we push it out a like further?
It'd have to be the next week for me, Jeff.
Okay. That's fine. It gives us a little more time for survey. Okay.
Like the 19th?
Sure.
All right.
Favorable.
I have a quick question. And I'm not sure, so Eric/Jeff, would it be appropriate for the site visit to be able to mark the trees that you are considering taking down in the 100-foot?
Yes. Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
So what time on the 19th are we thinking of?
It seems like early in the morning. It seems to be the best for everybody, Jeff. 8 o'clock?
8:30?
8:30, yeah.
Yeah, 8:30.
Yeah.
Preferable.
Trish, can you make it?
What day does that fall on, Eric?
I'm not sure.
A Tuesday also? Yeah, I can do 8:30 if we do a Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you tell us? I mean, I'm free most days. Why don't you tell us what day you're free? That would be helpful.
So my best day of flexibilities are always Fridays because I work from home on Fridays. But beyond that, I'm usually in crazy.
Tuesday morning, 8:30?
But Tuesday morning is fine. Yeah, I can do it as long as we do it at 8:30. I can't do it much later than that.
Wear your gun boots.
Okay.
Bring a knife.
I got some for Christmas, some cute ones.
Tuesday the 19th.
Four-wheel drive Ram because they don't want to take their car down. You're welcome to come with me. Let me know and I'll pick you up along the way, okay?
Yes.
Well, there's obviously not a route for everybody to drive a car down there. I think it's probably a better idea for everybody to walk.
Yeah, I did.
It's only 300 feet.
It's not far.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. Okay, so Jeff Hassett, if we're going to have the site visit on the 19th, when do you want to continue this hearing till?
Let's continue it to February 4th.
Okay. All right. Okay. Jeff, could you do us a favor and send out an email maybe tomorrow with the days and the times of the site visits?
Sure.
And the day when we're going to have the review of the project, whether it be the 21st or the 4th or whatever. So we'll have something in writing, please.
Okay.
Great. What else do we have?
Okay.
Is that it?
Jeff, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Hassett, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Deb, do we have anything else on the agenda?
No, that was it. I don't have anything that needs to be signed or any paperwork issues.
Anyone, any other subjects, last minute things people would like to bring up for discussion?
Well, while we're still on Howe Road, did you guys go back out another time to, as Jay suggested, to again take the 2017 stormwater permit and confirm which trees remain, or if any of them?
I was out there today, Tom, and they've taken down more trees.
Yeah.
If you look at the property on the left, there was a stand.
Yeah.
You're talking about the big rock mountain, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the quarry.
If you stand on the bottom, when I was there with Jeff 10 days ago, the trees on the left at the base were there. They've all been taken out now. So, yeah. Jeff, I think we got to run up there with the diagram for the Brian, what's his name? Brian Baldwin's project on the left, because some of the trees were on his property, they're taken out, and the other one, and have a look at it, Jeff.
Okay.
Because the guys up there, they're continuing to tear things out. It hasn't stabilized at all.
Yeah. There's not going to be a tree left. And if I remember right from that stormwater permit, there were quite a few trees that were
to remain.
Yeah.
There was a tree line, a proposed tree line on the diagram that was very significant, and it doesn't take much to just pull that old plan and go up there and look at where the proposed tree line was not to be disturbed, and then compare it to what's there now.
Jeff, are you in the office tomorrow?
Yes.
Can we go up and do it with the plan in hand?
Yeah.
And I'll take anybody who wants to come along.
Yeah.
I would also encourage you to look at it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a call.
Yeah.
I'd encourage you to look at the silt sock or the lack thereof
Okay.
That is along Howe Road. We haven't had, well, we've had some torrential rain, but we haven't had rain over, long durations of time. So it's been fairly dry up there only because we haven't had any rain. But anytime it rains, the sediment comes pouring off of that site. Yeah. And there needs to be better controls. In fact, the sediment and the stone are 4 feet out into Howe Road now. So it needs to be a much better job. It's at the top of Howe Road, and like anything else, it rolls and runs off down the hill. And it just floods everything and fills up catch basins, etc.
Yeah. Are you free at 11 o'clock tomorrow, Tom?
Yeah, sure.
Jeff, 11 o'clock?
Yep.
We'll meet you at the site at 11 o'clock.
Yep.
And you'll have the plans, Jeff?
Yes.
Great. Good.
Eric, can I recommend?
Go ahead.
Chris?
I was going to say, could I recommend you also go by, I think it's is it 190 Atlantic Avenue, the one right on the inlet there?
Yeah, 191.
191.
Where is that?
I can't be sure that the
right. Mm-hmm.
The size of the foundation is bigger than what was on the plans. And
is that the Kennedy house?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I looked back at the plans, and they actually showed a reduced footprint in the plans that we reviewed. Now, this brings me to a point that we might want to think about, and that is that when we're looking at some of these properties, it may be wise that we're not just looking at footprints, because it could be that, in fact, the footprint has been reduced, but the mass of the house is so gigantic that from the road, it looks as if it's much bigger.
You know, Chris, on that house, I remember the discussion with the builder, or the architect. He was going to keep the railing, the walkway that goes around the house. He was supposed to keep that, and he was going to take away the inside. Well, if he's going to keep the walkway going around the house, it's kind of hard to expand it if you're going to keep that.
Well, it's not. It hasn't been kept.
Taking it out.
And as he said during his presentation, he was going to keep it if it was found to be structurally sound, which is kind of like saying I'm not keeping.
Yeah.
So anyway.
He made it clear he was going to keep the pool house, and most of it sounded like it was going to go away.
I think he's kept the pool house, Marianne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Team's still there, fortunately. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then going back to Tom's, is it 92 that you're talking about? 92 Howe Road?
Yeah, I think that's what it would be.
I'm looking at the plan now, and there's a whole planting plan from Kennedy's, and it's supposed to have a lot of plants on it.
Now remember, that was issued to
trees.
That was issued to Brian Baldwin, and the property's changed. Somebody bought it from him, a realtor bought it from him, and now somebody bought that from the realtor, I believe.
It's very different from what I saw today. It looks like a mud. It's embarrassing.
So it's changed hands, and it's not clear what. It looks like maybe they lost the plan, maybe.
They lost a lot of trees. Everything's gone.
You have a copy. Make sure tomorrow when we meet, you have a copy of the plans, please, Jeff.
Yes.
All right. So we can look at them and take photographs and whatever. All right.
Well, this is probably like a good segue into inspections of the sites, and I had a nice conversation with Jeff this afternoon about just trying to a little bit more time diligence in upgrading the inspection tracker that we have that's on the OneDrive. So Jeff has guaranteed that he's going to do a little bit more. Upgrade that in a more timely manner. So look forward to that, Jeff. So thank you for that. And, if you ever want to see when last inspections were done, it's easy to look at the audit tracker, and it's a good place to start as far as, where things go. So again, Jeff and I had a nice conversation, and hopefully that audit tracker is, I would actually recommend that it's upkept on like a weekly basis, whether it be like at the end of the week, Jeff, if you could just commit to that, that would be great. On a weekly basis or maybe a bi-weekly basis.
You know, Jay, we all have 101 things to do. I think the meeting at the end of each month, we need to put it on the agenda. We need to all look at a copy of it, and we need to look at what we have done since the last meeting. And it's got to be at every month at the last meeting. It's got to be regular and predictable. And Jeff has to know we're going to look at it. Okay, yeah. That's how reporting systems work. If you leave it up, say, well, yeah, we'll do it now, and maybe in 3 weeks or 3 months, it loses its importance. So my feeling, and I'll work with Jeff on this, is that we make it a regular management tool for us. And it may only take 2 minutes or a minute to look at, but we flash it up and we make it something that's important to us, all right? And by looking at it, that will reflect its importance, okay?
Yeah, I support that.
I sent Jeff a few properties to take a look at, and he informed me that he has a schedule to go look at them next week.
Marianne, could you please copy me on those in the future, please?
I did.
I think you were.
You did? Oh, yeah. Okay.
And Chris was on it as well.
Yep. I'm still trying to master this Microsoft email system. This Outlook ain't the same as my Apple Mail and all of that. I'm struggling. All right. I lose half of everything I try and send out, but I may get there eventually at my age.
My trick is I forward the Microsoft mail to me. I have it on automatic forward, so I always see it. But then when I write back, it goes into Microsoft.
Do you have Apple Mail?
Yes.
Oh.
But I forward everything from Microsoft. I forward it to my personal mail, so I can at least be on top of it.
Okay. Alrighty. Anything else? Great. We'll see most of you, I hope, next Tuesday morning.
Motion to adjourn.
What's that?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Say no. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll see you Tuesday.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
I'm going to go get some dinner.
Good night. Me too.